Nox skimmed the mission window. Some elf princess was in trouble, and the rewards were huge. Elves and princesses weren't his scene, but EXP and stat points were. He was not passing that up. Getting stronger was the whole point. He accepted, and a city map blinked into his vision. A red marker pulsed a few miles away in a wrecked residential area. Target: Princess Syrian Facilian. Status: hunted extreme distress. The system did not explain who or what was hunting her. It did not need to. The important thing was getting there before she died, and those rewards disappeared. He pulled up his own status. Player status. Name: Nox. Level: 16. Title: Anomaly Slayer, Dungeon Conqueror, First Clear. HP: 180/240. MP: 0/0 sealed. Strength: 42. Agility: 32. Stamina: 25. Endurance: 25. Perception: 25. Luck: 22. Unallocated stat points: 45. Divine coins: 100. Gods watching you: 47. Skills: Regeneration, passive L1. Indomitable will, passive. Weapon mastery, passive L1. Appraise, active L1. Soul link, passive. Yeta, Kindra, Vesa. His health was still climbing back, that regeneration quietly doing its work. 45 unspent points felt like a small fortune. Then he remembered the divine gifts Aurelia had mentioned. He opened the divine mailbox. First came a message from the Lord of Carnage. Gift: Berserker's Draft X1, plus 20% strength/endurance, minus 10% agility for 5 minutes. Side effect: minor rage. Accept? Y/N. He accepted. The draft pinged into his inventory. More gifts followed. Master Strategos, Scroll of Tactical Insight, X1. Reveals an exploitable weakness. Single use. Accept. Trickster God Hermes 4. Hermes Express Beans, X5. Plus 30% agility for 1 minute. May cause jitters. Accept. Goddess of Gentle Showers. Vial of Purified Dew, X2. Cures minor poisons and status effects. Accept. The Silent Watcher. Shadow Wisp Amulet. Plus 5 agility. Passive muffles movement sounds. Accept and equip. Then Aurelia's stack arrived. Aurelia. Lesser Mana Weaving, Skill, L1, Perceive and Manipulate Ambient Mana. Requires unsealed mana channels. Accept. New skill icon unlocked. Aurelia. Sunstone Blade, Rare One-Handed Sword. Deals radiant bonus versus undead and shadow creatures. Accept. Aurelia. Mysterious Divine Egg X1. Unknown effects. Requires conditions to hatch. Accept. File as weird. Aurelia. Pouch of Endless Trail Mix. Never runs out. Accept. Aurelia. World's Best Player Mug Cosmetic. Accept. Aurelia. Sparkle Grenade X3. Non-lethal confetti distraction. Accept. When the inbox finally quieted, Nox surveyed the hall. A beginner mana skill, a solid sword, a mystery egg, endless snacks, a mug, and sparkle grenades. The gods were chaotic but useful. 45 points still burned. He thought back to the last fight. He wanted to hit faster, take hits better, and notice threats sooner. He allocated 15 to agility, 15 to endurance, 10 to perception, 5 to strength. The numbers refreshed. Strength, 47. Agility, 47. Stamina, 25. Endurance, 40. Perception, 35. Luck, 22. He felt the change. Movement was smoother. Pain was less sharp. He was more aware, like peripheral details had been turned up. Next were the skill boxes. He opened a random skill box first. Random skill box opened. New skill, Parkour, passive, L1, enhanced coordination, reduced fall damage, higher jump and climb. Scales with agility. Practical. Useful. He kept it. Then the unique skill box. Unique skill box opened. New unique skill, Core Integration, passive/active, L1. Passive grants understanding of monster cores. Active can attempt to absorb a core for stat increases or abilities. Risk of failure and backlash. He read that one twice. Absorbing cores for permanent power was a shortcut beyond grinding. It carried risk, but it could change everything. Core integration was a game changer. His toolkit looked a lot better now. Regeneration, indomitable will, weapon mastery, per core, appraise, and core integration. Shadow Wisp amulet equipped. Sunstone blade ready. Consumables stacked. The egg still weird, but intriguing. He pushed off the concrete ledge he'd been sitting on. The ache in his body had eased into a steady readiness. He glanced toward the route Yeda and the others had taken, then squared himself toward the marker for Princess Syrian. He stood, a small, half-smirk forming. Not excitement. Not optimism. Readiness. All right, he thought. Let's see what kind of trouble this princess's city has. Knox walked through the wrecked city, the air thick with silence. The system's map still hovered faintly in his mind, a blinking marker guiding him through shattered streets toward the so-called princess. Nothing moved, not even the wind. His hand brushed the gun at his hip. What the hell was I thinking? He'd gone toe-to-toe with that fur-covered nightmare, nearly got torn apart, and never once thought to use it. Not when it had him by the throat. Not when it slammed his face into the ground. He just forgot it existed. Was I too busy playing by the system's rules? Maybe. Or maybe after what happened with Mark, he hadn't wanted to use it again. Not unless there was no other choice. Stupid, he muttered. A weapon's a weapon. He drew the revolver. Cold, solid, heavier than he remembered. He triggered appraise just to see what the system thought. Appraise, old model revolver, common firearm. Description, a standard 6-shot .38 revolver. Reliable but unremarkable. Requires ammunition. Condition, slightly worn. Minor barrel fouling. Potential with weapon mastery. Basic proficiency achievable. Common, he said quietly. 5 bullets left. Good enough. He was about to keep walking when text flashed across his vision. Baron von Cynic. So, the kid ditches the girls. Predictable. Loyalty's a one-way street for him. Master strategos. Correction. His decision to let them pursue personal goals while he handles high-risk objectives alone preserves future reintegration potential. Efficient. Lady Veritas. Female units? They're people, strategos. And Knox didn't let them go. They chose to. Though why they stay after he admitted to, well, Mark is beyond me. Lord of Carnage, because he gets results. They followed him into hell and lived. That earns respect. He's building a pack. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. There's friends. They believe in him. It's not about tactics. It's about heart. Sparkling heart. Knox sighed. Friends, huh? Sure. Baron von Cynic. They're traumatized and clinging to whoever looks strongest. He's their power fantasy, not their savior. Aurelia, that's not true. He cares. He told Yeda he believed in her. That's growth. Don't listen to him, Knox. Lady Veritas, the Baron's tone aside, he has a point. Their attachment formed too fast. Shared trauma can forge distorted bonds. Knox frowned. They stayed because it was smart, he told himself. Safety in numbers. That's it. Trickster god Hermes 4. Or maybe they think he's hot now that he's not bleeding on the floor. Power's sexy. Faced with tears of joy. Aurelia, Hermes. Stop being disgusting. Oracle of Fates. Their connection runs deeper than circumstance. The threads of fate around them are radiant. Aurelia, don't you dare, Oracle. I swear I'll flood your inbox with glitter memes. Oracle of Fates, soulmates. Knox froze mid-step. What? Aurelia, Knox. Ignore that. She's exaggerating. It's just strong friendship. Totally normal friendship. Pleading face. He could almost picture her panicking behind her divine keyboard. The harder she tried to downplay it, the more suspicious it sounded. Soulmates with them? He thought of Kendra's temper, Yeda's quiet intensity, Vase's eerie calm. It didn't add up. Baron von Cynic. Oh, this is priceless. Look at him, probably glitching out. Emotional depth terrifies him. Hermes 4 soulmates? Finally, some drama worth watching. Knox tuned them out. The Baron's earlier words stuck in his mind. A walking power fantasy. 3 girls who made him their everything. Their everything? No, they just hadn't abandoned him. When he'd been bleeding out, they'd stayed. Kendra yelling for him to hold on. Yada trying to stop the bleeding. Even Veza had looked worried. He resumed walking, slower now. He'd always been alone. People usually meant pain. But those girls, it wasn't bad having them around, he admitted. It wasn't quiet, but it wasn't empty either. They worked well together. Yada's blade, Kendra's fire, Veza's logic, it fit. And when they left to find their families, the silence afterward had felt heavier than usual. Why, though? Aurelia, Nox? You're awfully quiet. Don't listen to them. Soulmates aren't real. Like unicorns that grant wishes if you feed them perfect strawberries. Totally fake. Unless you're in the Glimmerwood, but that's different. Focus on the mission. Princess Syria needs you. Sparkling Heart. He snorted. Unicorns and strawberries. Right? I'm fine, he told her. Just thinking. He wasn't about to unpack the soulmate nonsense or why the empty streets felt lonelier than they should. The princess mission mattered more. EXP, stat points, progress. Still, as he tightened his grip on the revolver and followed the map's pulsing red marker, that last thought refused to fade. It stayed there, faint and persistent, an itch he couldn't quite reach.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Knox was so tired when morning finally came, he could barely keep his eyes open. He had found some abandoned, mostly collapsed building to crash in for a bit, but rest hadn't really happened. He had spent the entire night following that blinking map marker for the princess, and despite his best efforts, he still hadn't found her. The dam marker kept shifting, or the paths were blocked by rubble, and it was seriously starting to piss him off. He leaned his head back against a surprisingly stable piece of wall and let his eyes drift closed, just for a few minutes. Sleep claimed him quickly, dragging him into a dream he didn't want. He was back in his old school, before the monsters, before the system. The same faces, the same taunts. He saw Mark, saw his other classmates. The dream shifted, the question hanging heavy in the air. If none of this new world stuff had ever happened, would he eventually have gone through with it? Would he have killed them? He woke up with a jolt, his body shaking. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. Damn it, he thought, pressing a hand to his chest where his heart was pounding. Guess my body still remembers all that bullying. He let out a long sigh and pulled up his stats. His health was almost full, that regeneration skill doing its job. The wound in his stomach was just a dull ache now, mostly healed. This was probably the best chance he was going to get to try and awaken his mana. He had that lesser mana weaving skill, and the description said his channels were sealed, but that the skill allowed interaction with ambient mana. It seemed like the logical place to start. Just as he was about to try and figure out how to actually do it, a familiar, overly enthusiastic text box from Aurelia popped into his vision. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. Morning Nox. Sparkles, are you thinking about unsealing your mana channels? That's a big step. It can be super rewarding, but also really dangerous if you're not careful. Some people experience intense discomfort. Please be super cautious. Sparkling Heart, pleading face. Before he could even process her warning properly, another chat notification appeared, this one in the main, public feed from a god he hadn't seen before. Lady Nyx of the Shadowed Veil, discomfort? Aurelia, you coddle him. The unsealing of mana is a trial by fire. If he survives, he proves his worth. If not, he was never meant for true power. Go on, player Nox. Embrace the pain. If you emerge, you'll have another devoted spectator in me. He read the new god's message, a cynical curl to his lip. Sounds like a good deal, he thought, a touch of his usual dark amusement filtering through his exhaustion. One more fan, one less problem. Maybe. He focused inward, trying to use that lesser mana weaving skill to feel for this ambient mana Aurelia had mentioned. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to be doing, just reaching out with his mind, trying to pull something toward himself, into himself. At first, nothing. Then, a faint coolness spread through his limbs. It wasn't unpleasant, almost like sinking into a cool bath on a hot day. Oh, this isn't so bad, he thought. Maybe Aurelia was just being dramatic. The coolness deepened, then shifted. The sensation of a cool bath slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to warm up. Then it got hotter, and hotter still. The comfortable warmth turned into a burning heat that started to singe at his nerves. A blue progress bar appeared in his vision, stark and unwelcome. Mana channel unsealing, 15%. The heat intensified with every passing second, escalating from a burn to feeling like his entire nervous system was being set on fire from the inside out. Kook, he choked out internally, his body arching against the wall. This is going to kill me. In the chaotic God chat, he vaguely registered Aurelia's frantic messages. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. Lady NYX, you wicked woman. Pouting face, how could you encourage him like that? He could die. This isn't a game. Nox, stop. Please, you don't have to do this. He almost let out a laugh, though it would have come out as a pained grunt. This goddess, Aurelia, she sure did seem to care a lot about him. He wondered why she acted like such a kid all the time. Anyways, I have to do this, he thought, gritting his teeth against the searing heat that was now spreading through his chest. It's the only way to really get stronger. I can't just keep punching things forever if I want to survive whatever comes next. The process got so much worse after that. The burning sensation intensified until it felt like his blood had turned to molten lava, charring his insides. He could feel his skin getting hot to the touch, and a thin trickle of blood started leaking from his nose, then his ears. His body was literally starting to shut down from the overload. Mana channel unsealing, 68%. This is taking its sweet-ass time, he complained, his vision starting to blur at the edges. The world was tilting, the sounds around him fading into a dull, distant roar. He was going under. He could feel the blackness creeping in, a tempting promise to end the unbearable pain. No, I have to stay awake. A part of his brain screamed, a tiny spark of defiance against the overwhelming agony. I have to stay awake no matter what. His gaze, hazy and unfocused, fell on the revolver still clutched in his trembling hand. A desperate, completely insane idea sparked in the part of his mind that was still lucid. It was a terrible idea. It was probably the only idea he had left. He didn't hesitate. He didn't have the luxury to think it through. He lifted the gun, his arm shaking with the effort, and pressed the muzzle against his own thigh. Then he pulled the trigger. The roar of the shot was deafening in the half-collapsed room. A new, shockingly sharp pain exploded through his leg, a clean, piercing agony that was completely different from the whole body inferno he was already enduring. The impact slammed his leg back against the rubble. Motherfucker, he screamed his head, the raw, visceral shock of the gunshot, a lightning bolt that jolted his entire system back to full, excruciating awareness. The blackness receded, chased away by the new, blinding pain. He pushed through, using the sharp agony in his leg as an anchor to keep his mind from dissolving into the fire. The two competing pains warred within him, but it was enough to keep him conscious. He watched the progress bar with a hate-filled intensity, watching it crawl upwards with agonizing slowness. To him, it felt like years of torture crammed into a few minutes. Then, finally, the number on the screen ticked over. Mana channel unsealing, 100%. The fire vanished. Just like that, it was gone. The immense, body-wide agony ceased, leaving behind only the throbbing, bleeding hole in his leg and a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. He let out a long, shuddering sigh of pure relief, his head slumping back against the wall. It's finally over, he thought, his body limp. But a new window appeared immediately, its crisp blue text a cruel joke. Unsealing complete. Commencing Stage 2, Mana Core Formation. A stable vessel is required to store mana. Wait, what? Before he could even fully process the words, a completely new type of pain exploded from the center of his chest. It wasn't heat. It was a crushing, grinding pressure, as if a star was being born and dying all at once right inside his ribcage. Nox slumped against the wall, his body screaming from the inside out. The pain was something else, not like the burning from unsealing his mana channels, but a brutal, grinding pressure in his chest, like someone was trying to crush his ribcage into dust. He was fading, the edges of his vision going dark again. Shooting himself in the leg had been a desperate move to stay awake through the last round of torture, but he couldn't pull that trigger again. No way I'm blasting another hole in myself, he thought. Got to find another way. His hand shook as it hovered over the bloody mess of his thigh. The bullet hole was still fresh, oozing. He gritted his teeth, took a shallow breath, and jammed his finger right into the wound. The pain was sharp, a white-hot spike that cut through the foggy haze, threatening to pull him under. He twisted his finger hard, and his whole body jerked. Fuck, that hurts, he thought, his jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth might crack. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it was enough to keep him conscious, at least for now. His whole body was trembling, muscles twitching like they were about to give up on him. The God chat was still there, flickering in his vision like a glitchy TV screen. Lady Nyx was at it again, her words cold and sharp. Lady Nyx of the Shadowed Vale, the boy's body is failing. He'll die before the core forms. A pity. I expected more resilience. That comment hit him like a slap, but before he could even process it, another message popped up, this one from Aurelia. Her usual bubbly, cheerleader vibe was gone, replaced by something fierce, almost scary. The text box glowed brighter, the words carrying a weight that made the whole chat feel like it was holding its breath. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, silence, Nyx. You will not speak of Nox's death. He is stronger than you could ever comprehend, and I will not tolerate your venom. He will rise, and he will outshine every star in your shadowed vale. Speak ill of him again, and I swear by the eternal flame, you will regret it. Nox blinked, his hazy brain struggling to keep up. Whoa, she's not messing around, he thought. Aurelia's words weren't just angry. They were commanding, like she was daring Nyx to open her mouth again. The chat went dead silent. No snarky comebacks, no side comments from the other gods. A few names even grayed out, like they'd just noped out of the conversation entirely. Aurelia's promise hung there, heavy and final, and it was like nobody wanted to test her. He didn't have time to dwell on it. The pain in his chest was still crushing him, like his heart was being squeezed in a vice. His body was drenched in sweat and blood, the bullet wound in his leg still throbbing where he dug into it. Every muscle felt like it was being torn apart, fiber by fiber. He bit down on his lip, hard, the sharp sting of his teeth sinking and giving him another jolt to stay awake. I'm not dying here, he thought, his mind clawing at that one stubborn idea. I'm going to make it. I'm going to be the strongest damn player this messed up world's ever seen. The progress bar in his vision was creeping along, way too slow for his liking. Mana core formation, 73%. He cursed under his breath, the words coming out in a hoarse, shaky mess. Shit, come on, hurry the hell up. His voice barely carried, but saying it out loud helped, even if it was just himself. He leaned his head back against the wall, tried to focus on anything but the pain. The revolver was still in his other hand, slick with sweat. He gripped it tighter, like it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. Why is this taking so damn long? He thought. The unsealing had been bad enough, but this core formation thing was on another level. It wasn't just pain, it was like his body was being rebuilt from the inside, every nerve screaming in protest. He wondered, for a split second, if he made a huge mistake trying to awaken his mana like this. Maybe he should have waited, found a safer way. Nah, he decided. Safe's for suckers. I need this power now. He glanced at the chat again, half expecting another snide remark from one of the gods, but it was still quiet. Aurelia's outburst had shut them all up, and he couldn't help but feel a tiny bit of respect for her. She's got some guts, he thought, going off on a goddess like that. Damn, it was weird, having some divine cheerleader in his corner, but he wasn't complaining. Not when she was sending him potions and swords and glitter bombs for some reason. His mind wandered, probably because the pain was making him loopy. He thought about the girls. They were probably off checking on their families by now, maybe freaking out about their parents or siblings. He didn't get it, that whole family thing. Never had one worth caring about. But seeing them so worked up about it, the way their voices got all soft and worried, it stirred something in him. Not pity exactly, but something. They're probably fine, he thought. They're tough. Tougher than they look. The progress bar ticked up again. Mana core formation, 89%. Almost there, he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. His lip was bleeding now, the metallic taste filling his mouth from where he'd bitten into it. The pain in his chest was still relentless, but he could feel something shifting, like the pressure was starting to form into something solid. A core, maybe? He didn't know how this crap worked, but he wasn't about to quit now. He thought back to the fight in the gym, the way he'd taunted that big furry boss into making a dumb move. It had worked, but it had almost cost him his life. Worth it, he decided. Got me levels, skills, and those cores. Speaking of cores, that new skill, core integration, was sitting in the back of his mind like a loaded gun. Absorbing monster cores sounded risky as hell, but the payoff could be huge. Permanent stat boosts, maybe even new abilities. I'll go try that soon, he thought. Once I'm not, dying. The bar hit 95%. His body was shaking harder now, his strength leaking out like water from a cracked bucket. He twisted his finger in the bullet wound again, the sharp pain cutting through the fog. Fuck, he hissed, his voice cracking. It was enough to keep him from passing out, but barely. He was running on fumes, his vision swimming. The chat flickered again, but it was just Aurelia, her tone back to its usual over-the-top cheer, though it felt a little forced. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, private chat. You're so close, Nox. You've got this. Just a little more. I believe in you. Sparkling Heart Sparkles, don't give up. Okay? You're going to be amazing with mana. He managed a weak mental snort. Yeah, sure, amazing. If I don't croak first. Her enthusiasm was almost annoying, but it was also kind of nice. Like she actually gave a damn whether he lived or died. Weird. The progress bar finally hit 100%. Mana core formation, 100%. The crushing pressure in his chest vanished, like someone had flipped a switch. His body went limp, every ounce of strength just gone. He slid down the wall a bit, his head lolling to the side. The pain was still there, especially in his leg where he'd shot himself, but the bone-deep agony from the core formation was over. He let out a shaky breath, his whole body slick with sweat and blood. Core formation complete. User is ready to cultivate mana. He stared at the notification, his brain too fried to fully process it. I did it, he thought. I actually fucking did it. He felt different. Not stronger, not exactly, but like there was something new inside him, a faint hum in his chest where the core had formed. He didn't know what to do with it yet, but it was there. All right, he muttered, his voice hoarse. That's done. Now what? He tried to stand, but his legs weren't having it. They buckled, and he caught himself on the wall, cursing under his breath. Gotta give it a minute, he thought. Body's been through hell. He checked his stats quick, just to see where he stood. Player status. Name Nox. Level 16. HP 120/240. MP 50/50. The new MP stat caught his eye. Mana points, huh? Guess that's what the core's for. His health was still crap, but the regeneration skill was doing its thing, slowly ticking his HP back up. The bullet wound in his leg was a problem, though. He needed to patch it up before he bled out again. He reached into his inventory, pulling up the list of gifts he'd accepted from the gods. The vial of purified dew from the goddess of gentle showers seemed like the play. He mentally selected it. Using vial of purified dew X1. Negative status effect, bleeding removed. A faint mist seemed to settle over his leg, and the oozing from the bullet wound stopped. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, enough that he could think straight. Better, he thought. Still hurts like a bitch, though. A new blue screen popped up right in his face. It had info about his mana core, the thing that had just caused him so much damn pain. Mana core established. Grade C, upgradable. Current capacity, 50 MP. Mana regeneration, 1 MP per 5 minutes. Increases with endurance and core grade. Elemental affinity, none, neutral core. Not to read it over. Grade C, huh? So, not the best, but it says upgradable. That's something, I guess. He saw that his mana would come back, but slowly. 1 point every 5 minutes? That's slow as hell. Better than nothing, though. He was super tired. His whole body just wanted to quit, to pass out and forget everything. But he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Got this new mana thing. Might as well see what it does. Can't just sit here. He tried to use that lesser mana weaving skill he'd gotten from Aurelia. He focused, trying to pull in a mana he could now feel in the air around him. It felt weird, like trying to breathe underwater, but not actually drowning. He tried to get to go into his new core to fill it up or something. Just when he thought he was maybe getting the hang of it, he felt something else. Or more like he heard something. Footsteps. Close. And getting closer. They weren't trying to be quiet. Crap, someone's coming, he thought. Probably heard the gunshot from earlier when I shot my leg. Took them long enough to find me. The footsteps were in the building now, heavy. Sounded like more than one person. He tried to push himself up to get ready for whatever. But his leg, the one he'd blasted a hole in, just screamed at him with a fresh wave of pain. The world tilted sideways for a second, and he went down again, landing hard on his side with a grunt. Damn it, not now, he thought, his head spinning. The floor felt cold. This is a really bad time to be taking a nap on the floor. The door to the room he was in, or what was left of it, creaked open wider. 3 guys walked in. They were big, looked like trouble, and they saw him on the floor right away, all messed up and bloody. Their eyes lit up, not in a friendly way. Well, what have we here? One of them said. He was the biggest of the 3, with a nasty grin. Looks like someone had a rough night. The other 2 snickered. They spread out a bit, like they were cornering an animal. It was a small room, not much space to move. Great, he thought. His hand instinctively went to where the gun had been, but he'd dropped it when he fell. Just what I needed. More assholes. The big guy walked closer, his boots crunching on debris. What you got there, buddy? Anything good on ya? He didn't wait for an answer. He and his friend started searching Knox, patting him down rough. Knox just lay there, too weak and too surprised to fight back right then. His body still felt like it had been run over. They didn't find much. His pockets were mostly empty except for those monster cores he'd grabbed from the gym. The goons looked at the cores, then at each other, then just tossed them aside like they were rocks. Idiots, he thought. They don't even know what those are worth. One of them found the old model revolver Knox had dropped when he fell. Ooh, a piece, the guy said, picking it up and checking the cylinder. Still got a few shots. Nice. Then the big one spotted the sunstone blade, which Knox had managed to mostly hide under himself. He yanked it free with a grunt. And a sword? Fancy. He gave it a clumsy swing. The big guy licked his lips, looking Knox up and down with a look that made Knox's skin crawl. You look like you're about to pass out, friend. Maybe we can help you relax a bit. His voice was oily and suggestive. This whole thing was really pissing Knox off. He was hurt. Yeah, but he wasn't helpless. Not anymore. He took a small breath, then another, trying to feel that mana in the air again, trying to connect with that new energy inside him. It was a faint feeling, but it was definitely there like a tiny battery in his chest. Okay, screw this, he decided. He focused on his core, trying to pull that mana into himself, trying to get it to move, to do something. The big guy leaned down, his gross, unshaven face way too close. Knox could smell his bad breath. He reached out a hand, like he was going to grab Knox's shirt or maybe something worse. Just as his dirty fingers were about to touch him, Knox moved. It wasn't a stumble or a desperate flail. He spun, his body way more fluid and controlled than it should have been, given how wrecked he felt. It was like he was a dancer for a split second, all grace and speed he didn't know he had. His good leg came around in a perfectly aimed kick. The kick connected right with the side of the big guy's head. There was a solid, wet thwack. The guy's eyes went wide with surprise, then rolled back in his head. He went flying sideways, crashing hard into the already crumbling wall. Dust and bits of plaster rained down. He slid down the wall in a heap and didn't get back up. He was out cold. The other 2 guys just froze, staring at their boss on the floor, then back at Knox, who was now, somehow, on his feet. He was a bit shaky, yeah, but he was standing. What the? One of them stammered, taking a step back. Knox let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His leg was screaming, but the kick had felt good. like he'd finally let off some steam. That mana, whatever it was, had definitely given him a boost. He looked at the two remaining goons, a nasty, cold smirk spreading across his face. It wasn't his usual bored look. This was different. This was pissed off. "All right, you pieces of shit," he drawled, his voice low and dangerous. "Who's next? Or are you just going to stand there looking stupid?" The guy who'd taken his gun fumbled with it, trying to aim, but his hands were shaking. You broke his jaw, man. He's out cold." "Yeah." He took a step towards them. It was a limping step, but it had a certain kind of menace to it. He was asking for it. Touching people without permission? Bad manners. He let out a harsh laugh. "Guess you two need a lesson in etiquette as well, huh?" "Stay back, freak," the other guy squeaked, grabbing the sunstone blade, though he held it like it was a live snake. Knox just kept coming, slow and deliberate. "Freak? Oh, I'll show you, freak." He could feel that mana inside him, still just a little bit, but it was there, humming. It felt dark, like it was listening to him. "You like patting me down so much? How about I return the favor?" He feinted to the left, and the guy with the sword flinched, swinging wildly. Knox just sidestepped it easy, then his hand shot out and grabbed the guy's wrist, the one holding the sword. He twisted hard. There was a sharp crack, and the guy screamed, dropping the sunstone blade. It clattered on the floor. "Oops," he said, his smirk widening. "Butterfingers." He kicked the sword away. Now, where were we? Ah, yes. Lessons. The guy whose wrist he just snapped was clutching it, his face white with pain. The other one, the one with the gun, finally managed to point it at him. "I'll shoot you. I swear I will," he yelled, but his voice was cracking. Knox just looked at him, his eyes like ice. "Go ahead. Pull the trigger. See what happens." He took another step. "Or are you two chicken shit? You look like the type. All bark, no bite, just like your boss over there." He gestured with his head towards the unconscious guy. Pathetic. The guy with the gun was sweating now. He glanced at his friend, who was whimpering on the floor, then back at Knox. Knox could practically see the fear rolling off him. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" the gunman whispered, his eyes wide. "You're sick." Knox laughed again, a cold, empty sound. "Sick? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of assholes like you thinking you can push everyone around." He was close now, right in the guy's face. "You wanted to find something good on me? Well, guess what? You found trouble. Big trouble." He didn't even wait for the guy to react. He punched him a quick, brutal shot to the gut. The air whooshed out of the guy, and he doubled over, gagging. The gun clattered to the floor next to the sword. Knox nudged the weapons with his foot, then looked down at the two conscious goons, both of them now either hurt or terrified. "Now, get the hell out of my sight before I change my mind and decide to use you two for target practice," he growled. "And take your trash with you." He nodded at their boss. The guy with the broken wrist scrambled back, his eyes darting between Knox and the exit. The one he had punched was still wheezing, but he managed to nod frantically. They dragged their unconscious leader towards the door, not looking back. As they were about to disappear, the one he had punched stopped at the doorway. He turned, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and bravado. "You'll pay for this," he shouted, his voice still shaky but full of venom. "Our real boss, he'll hunt you down. He'll make you wish you were never born." Knox just watched him, that cold smirk still playing on his lips. He could feel that new mana swirling inside him, faint but potent. It felt responsive. As the guy spoke, Knox imagined that mana, dark and cool, wrapping around him, unseen. It felt like living shadows clinging to him, empowering him. He let out a low chuckle, his eyes glinting. Let him try. A few hours zipped by. Knox was already getting the hang of that mana stuff. He wasn't just letting his regeneration skill do its slow thing anymore. He was actively trying to push mana into his aching body parts. It kind of worked. His leg didn't throb as much, and overall, he felt a bit more solid, less like he'd fall apart. He even tried to push some of it into his muscles while he ran. Maybe this will make me stronger, faster, or something, he figured. He was running through the city, or what was left of it, the map blinking away, supposedly leading him to this princess. The sun was up now, which was something. But as he ran, his brain wouldn't shut up. Why am I even doing all this? He thought. Yeah, getting strong is cool. No more getting my ass kicked. But is that it? just so I'm not weak anymore. Then he remembered what Ava yelled at him back in the gym. Stuff about him being a pathetic loser, just scared. If I'm only getting strong to not be scared or to get back at people, then she was right, wasn't she? I'm still that same weak kid inside. He hated that thought. Hated a lot. It made his stomach churn more than the bad candy bar he'd eaten earlier. He tried to shake it off, but Ava's words just kept bouncing around in his head, mixing with memories of Mark and the classroom. Damn it. He was so caught up in his own head, he didn't even see it coming. One second, he was jogging down a busted-up street. The next, a massive car was flying right at him, like someone had yeeted it with a giant slingshot. Oh shit. He reacted on pure instinct, diving sideways. The car smashed into a building right where he'd been standing a second before, making a hell of a noise. He scrambled up, heart hammering. That was way too close. He looked at where the car had come from. Not far off, there was some kind of monster. It was big, ugly, and definitely not one of those gobdogs. This thing was new, and it was fighting someone. A woman, it looked like. She was fast, moving around, and then he saw it. Pointed ears. Hold on a second, he thought, his brain catching up. Pointed ears? That's ought to be her, right? The elf princess the system was blabbing about. The blinking marker on his map seemed to agree, pulsing right over where she was fighting. The monster roared and swiped at her. She dodged, but it looked like she was having a tough time. Well, guess this is my stop. He wasn't about to let his payday get eaten. He started running towards them, pulling out that sunstone blade. It felt pretty good in his hand, balanced. The princess stumbled as the monster lunged again. Nox put on a burst of speed. He got there just as the monster was about to bring a massive claw down on her. He didn't even think, just swung the sword. It sliced clean through the monster's neck. The head, ugly as sin, plopped onto the ground with a wet thud. The body stood there for a second, then crashed down. Huh, he said, looking at the dead monster. First time seeing something that wasn't a gobdog. These things are getting weirder. He let out a breath and started to turn around. Big mistake. Suddenly, there was something cold and hard against his throat. He froze. There was a sword ready to end him any time. Identify yourself, human, a voice said. It was the woman, the elf. Her voice was sharp, and she talked kinda stiff, like she learned English from a really old, formal book. Yup, he thought, not moving a muscle. Definitely not from around here. This princess gig was already more complicated than he'd figured. He didn't move an inch. That sword felt way too close to his neck. Great, just my luck. Save the princess. Get skewered by the princess. Easy, he said. His voice was steady, even if his heart was beating faster than he liked. Not looking for a fight. The elf didn't react. The sword stayed put. Who are you, human? And why are you here? Right to the point. Okay. He thought about how to explain this without sounding like a total nut job. Name's Nox, he told her. And as for why I'm here, well, someone mentioned you might be in a serious jam, Princess Syrian Facilian. He dropped her full name. He figured that had to get a reaction. It did. The sword at his throat lowered a fraction. That was a good sign. You know my name? She asked. Her voice was still stiff, but maybe a tiny bit surprised. Yeah, he said. Got some intel that you were, being hunted. Looks like it was accurate. He nodded towards the dead monster without taking his eyes off her. She finally pulled the sword away. Nox let out a quiet breath. He could feel the spot on his neck where the blade had been. He took a proper look at her now. She was definitely an elf. The ears were a dead giveaway. She looked young. And her outfit, well, it was something. That's what she fights in, he thought. It looked like it was made for combat, sure, with places for weapons and stuff. But it was also the kind of gear that guys would probably stare at for a whole other reason. Practical for fighting, but also really gets your attention. Guess that's how elf royalty rolls in a battle. He figured it probably worked one way or another. Who sent you? She asked, her eyes still on him, like she was trying to figure him out. Here we go with the explanations. It's a long story, he said. Let's just say I got a mission. Said a princess needed help. That was you, right? The elf princess looked at the monster's corpse. That was one of Gorik's hounds, she said, her voice tight. They have been pursuing me relentlessly. Gorik, he asked. Sounds like a typical bad guy. A chieftain from the Shadow Wastes, she replied. He desires my capture. For leverage against my kingdom, I presume. So a kidnapping attempt. He felt a little bit of satisfaction looking at the dead monster. Well, he's one dog short now. She looked at him then, really looked at him. He knew he was a mess, covered in dirt and old blood, clothes torn. Not exactly hero material. You faced that beast by yourself? She asked. Just finished the job, he said. It was about to make you its chew toy. He thought he saw something shift in her expression, but it was gone fast. I'm Syrian Facilian, she said. She did this formal little nod thing. I extend my gratitude for your intervention, human. Knox. Human Knox. Catchy. No problem, he said. So what now? You gotta hide out, or are we gonna stand around here waiting for more of Gorik's fan club to show up? She straightened her shoulders. There's a sanctuary, a place of safety established by my people. However, it is a considerable distance, and the route is fraught with peril. Of course it is, he thought. Nothing's ever simple. All right then, he said. Lead on, princess. Let's get out of here before something else decides you look tasty. She gave another small nod. She still looked a bit suspicious of him, he could tell. But at least she wasn't threatening to slice his throat anymore. That was definitely an improvement. They started walking. Knox kept an eye out. He figured this Gorik guy wasn't just going to give up because one monster got taken out. This was probably just the start of another long day. They hadn't gone far when the princess started with the questions. She kept glancing around at the wrecked buildings like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. This world of yours, she said, her voice a bit softer now, less like she was about to order an execution. It is broken. Do you know what befell it? Knox shrugged. Not really. There was this big earthquake, then those monster things started showing up. After that, everything just went to hell. That's about all I got. He figured that was the simplest way to put it. No point getting into system messages and merging worlds with an elf princess he just met. She nodded slowly. A cataclysm, then. Our own seers spoke of disturbances, ripples in the fabric of realities. Perhaps this is the result. Seers? Ripples? Okay, she's definitely not from around here, he thought. It was weird talking about this stuff so casually, but then again, what part of his day had been normal? They walked in silence for a bit. Then she made a small sound, almost a wrinkle of her nose. Human Knox, she said, and he braced himself. Your scent. It is rather potent. He stopped and sniffed his own shirt. Yeah, she wasn't wrong. It definitely stank after all he went through. Can't blame her. I probably reek. Been a rough couple of days, he said. Showers haven't exactly been on the top of my to-do list. She didn't comment on that, just kept walking. He fell in a step beside her. The silence stretched for a minute, then she spoke again. You mentioned someone informed you of my plight, she said, her eyes on him. Who was this informant? How did they know of my presence here and my predicament? He thought fast. He wasn't about to start explaining the system. That would make him sound certifiably insane. Yeah, not touching that one. Just the source, he said, keeping his voice even. Heard some whispers, put two and two together. Lucky for you, I guess. He tried to make it sound like no big deal. The princess didn't look entirely convinced. He could see her watching him out of the corner of her eye. She was probably used to getting straight answers from people. Whispers in a world such as this? She asked. That seems improbable. This whole situation is improbable. Princess, he said. Giant monsters, magic, elves showing up in the middle of a city. Improbable is kind of the new normal. She didn't push it, much to his relief. He really didn't want to have to make up a more elaborate lie. He was tired, he was hungry, and he still had to get this princess to her sanctuary, whatever that was. Just got to keep moving, he thought. Get this mission done, get the rewards, then figure out what the hell to do next. He glanced at Syrian. She was still looking around, taking in the destruction. She looked out of place, like a character from one of those fantasy books had stepped right into the real, messed up world, which, he guessed, was pretty much what had happened. Then he decided to ask her something. So what about your world? What's it like? She was quiet for a bit, then she actually smiled a little. My world is not as advanced as this one, in some ways. She paused. Your kind has these cars and tall structures. We do not possess such technology, but we have magic, and ancient creatures roam our lands, some benevolent, some not. She looked around at the broken city again. If I was brought here, it stands to reason that other elements of my world, perhaps even those creatures, might have crossed over as well. Magic and ancient creatures, huh? So that explains the dungeons and those dog things, maybe. And if she's here, yeah, more stuff probably came over too. This whole merge thing is a bigger mess than I thought. He was about to say something about that when he heard it. A noise, like a car engine. Then another one. The princess tensed up immediately. He saw her hand go to the sword she had. Guess she hasn't seen many cars before, he thought. Or heard them. The sound got closer. They were coming up on a part of the city that didn't look nearly as trashed as where they'd been. Some buildings were actually still standing properly, and he saw people. Not monsters, actual people, walking around like it was just another day, almost. Just then, a blue screen popped up in his vision. It was a system message. Safe zone entered. City District 7. Status. Monster incursions are actively repelled. He read it. Safe zone, huh? No monsters. That's good. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Maybe he could actually get some proper rest here, and some real food that wasn't out of a vending machine. The princess was looking around, her eyes wide. There are so many of your kind here. And this place, it feels different. Calmer. Yeah, he said, nodding at the system message only he could see. This is a safe zone. No monsters allowed. He looked at the people. They were dressed in all sorts of stuff. Some looked like regular city folk. Others had gear on and looked ready for a fight. They started walking. He noticed she was sticking real close to him, like almost bumping his elbow close. It was a bit weird. He wasn't used to anyone being that near him, especially not some elf royalty. She kept looking around at every little noise, her hand never too far from that sword she had. She's pretty jumpy, he thought. Guess this whole situation is a lot for her. After a few more minutes of her practically glued to his side, he figured he should say something. Hey, he said, not looking at her. You can chill out a bit. No one's going to jump out and grab you while I'm here. She glanced at him, her eyes wide for a second. My apologies, Human Knox. It is unfamiliar territory. And your kind, we seldom walk so near. Yeah, well, things are different now, he said. He didn't really care about elf customs or whatever. He just needed her not be so tense she accidentally stabbed him if a cat jumped out. Besides, he thought, looking ahead at the trash street, I can't afford to lose all that EXP if she gets herself killed. This mission reward is too good to pass up. Let's go get something to eat. I am starving. Little did they know, someone watching them real close. Knox knew a place not too far off, a small restaurant he used to go to sometimes before all this craziness started. He was surprised it was still standing, looked almost normal from the outside. Syrian was still jumpy, her eyes darting around at every little thing. Before they stepped inside, Syrian paused. He watched as she sort of shimmered for a second, and just like that, her pointy elf ears were gone. She looked human enough now. Huh, magic camouflage, he thought. That's pretty neat. Could be useful. Hey, can you teach me how to do that ear-hiding thing? He asked. He figured it couldn't hurt to ask. Syrian just gave him a look. No, she said, her voice flat. Well, okay then, he thought. Worth a shot, I guess. Didn't really expect a yes. They went into the restaurant. It was actually kind of busy. People were talking, eating, moving around. It felt weirdly normal after everything he'd been through. They found a table in the back corner, away from most of the other patrons. A waiter came over pretty quick, and he ordered some chicken and rice for both of them. It sounded simple, and he was starving. When the food arrived, Syrian just stared down at her plate. She picked up her fork, but didn't actually eat anything. What's up? He asked her, already taking a big bite of his own chicken. Not hungry. Is this fair, safe for consumption? She asked. She poked a piece of chicken with the tip of her fork like it might bite her. Knox almost choked on his food. Yeah, it's safe, he said. It's just chicken and rice. Good stuff. People eat it all the time here. He wondered if elf food was really different or something. Syrian looked at the food again. It does appear palatable, she thought. Her eyes then shifted to Knox, who was eating like he hadn't seen food in days. Which, fair enough, he hadn't. But why is this human extending such aid? What is his ultimate objective? He seeks reward for my safe passage. That much is clear, but there is something more to him something I cannot quite discern. Knox finished another mouthful. So, the plan is we eat, he said, talking around his food a bit. Then I really need to find a place to crash for a while. Get cleaned up, you know? Maybe grab some actual supplies. He glanced at his own torn and dirty clothes. He definitely needed a shower. A sound strategy, human Knox, she said, finally taking a small, cautious bite of rice. Rest and replenishment are indeed vital after exertion. Yeah, vital, he thought. And I need to not pass out before I get paid for babysitting a princess who asks if chicken is safe. He watched her eat for a second. She ate slowly, like she was analyzing every grain of rice. So, this sanctuary you mentioned, he said, after he'd eaten about half his plate. How far is it, really? And are we talking like a secret elf treehouse, or what? She put her fork down. She looked at him. I did not know the precise location, she admitted. That surprised him a little. She doesn't know? Then how are we supposed to get there? He thought. When I awoke in this world, she continued, her voice quiet, I heard the voices of my sisters. They guided me, told me the direction I must travel. But then, I encountered trouble on my path. Those beasts attacked. She gestured vaguely, like she didn't want to think about it too much. And then you appeared. He processed that. Sisters' voices, huh? So some kind of magic telepathy thing, maybe. In which direction did they tell you to go? He asked. North, she said simply. They said to head north. He thought about that. North from here. If this city is where I think it is, then north could be heading towards the Olinghono region. That place was mostly wilderness and old mountains, or at least it used to be. Not exactly a spot he'd pick for a sanctuary, but who knew with all this merged stuff? All right, north it is then, he said. He finished his food. So you just woke up here? No warning, no nothing. She shook her head. It was disorienting. One moment I was in Life Woods, my home. The next, here. This broken world. She looked around the restaurant again, then back at him. Human Knox, you are strong. You dispatched that hound with ease. What is the measure of your power? He paused. Measure of my power? How am I supposed to answer that? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10? This isn't some video game character sheet. I can just show her. He had an idea. He'd seen those system messages about levels before. Maybe he could get some info on her that way. He focused on her, trying to use that appraise skill. A blue box popped into his vision. Appraise error. Target level exceeds user level by significant margin. Information restricted. He stared at the message. Error? Level gap too large. What the hell does that mean? He looked at Syrian, who was just waiting for an answer, looking all calm and collected. Don't tell me. She's pretending, he thought. She seemed like she was in real trouble with that monster. But if her level is way higher than mine, what's going on here? Just how strong is she? He needed to know. It's hard to say, he said, trying to sound casual. How about you? You seem pretty capable yourself. What's your level? He figured he'd just ask her straight up. If she was playing games, maybe she'd slip up. She tilted her head slightly, like the question was a bit odd, but she answered. Oh, she said, her voice still polite and a bit formal. I am merely level 70. Knox choked on air. He coughed, trying to get his breath back. Oh, he managed to get out, staring at her. Level 70? 70. I'm level 16. Merely level 70? Is she serious? He looked at her again. She didn't look like she was joking. Just sitting there, Mr. Formal Elf Princess, dropping level numbers like it was no big deal. This mission just got a whole lot more interesting. Knox just stared at her. Merely level 70? Is she serious? His own level 16 felt like a joke next to that. He was still trying to get his head around the number when he had to ask. So, you're just, what? Hiding your power back there with that monster, he asked. He remembered her looking pretty beat when he'd found her. Syrian looked at him, not offended, just kind of curious. Why would you assume such a thing, human Knox? He gestured vaguely with his fork. Well, you looked like you were in trouble. I mean, I had to jump in and save you. She took another tiny, precise bite of her chicken. Did I appear to be losing then? She asked. She paused, considering. I was merely fatigued. The pursuit had been relentless, and I had not rested since the previous day's light. He thought about that. Just tired? Not about to get eaten by that ugly hound thing. He almost believed her. She was just so direct about it. No excuses. I like how honest she is, he thought. It was a change from people who always had some angle or would try to make themselves look better. So, level 70? Huh, he said, trying to make it sound casual. He wanted to see if she was just messing with him. That's a lot. He decided to see how she'd react to his own level, maybe get a better read on her. I'm only level 16, by the way. She stopped eating. She put her fork down very carefully. Her eyes, which were usually calm and a bit distant, fixed on him. Level 16, she repeated, her voice flat, almost too quiet. And when did you awaken to your abilities, Human Knox? Yesterday, he said, taking another bite of rice. Right after the whole world went nuts. Syrian went completely still. Her eyes, which he'd thought couldn't get any wider, widened just a fraction more. It was the most reaction he'd gotten out of her so far, more than when he'd killed the monster. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at him. He awakened yesterday, she thought, her mind trying to process the information. It didn't make sense. And he is already level 16? How is that even possible? What manner of human is this? She had heard tales of prodigies, of those blessed by the gods with swift advancement, but this was beyond anything she knew. He watched her. Okay, that got her attention, he thought, a little bit pleased. Maybe level 16 in a day isn't normal, even for whatever fancy world she's from. He leaned back a bit in his chair, trying to look like it was no big deal. Is that unusual? He asked, just to poke her a bit. She finally blinked, a slow, deliberate movement. Human Knox, she said, and her voice was even more formal than before, if that was possible. To achieve such a level of power in a single rotation of the sun, it is not merely unusual. It is unprecedented in all the chronicles of Lifewoods. Unprecedented. He wasn't sure what chronicles were, but it sounded important. So, I'm some kind of freak, even to the elves. Good to know. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was definitely interesting. He just shrugged. Guess I'm a fast learner. She picked up her fork again, but she didn't eat. She just turned it over and over in her fingers, still looking at him like he was some kind of puzzle she couldn't solve. The food on her plate sat forgotten. Her hand tightened around the fork, her knuckles going pale. She was still staring at Knox, her brain spinning with a million thoughts. Fate? Was that what dragged this human into my path, she wondered. The idea felt heavy, like it was trying to sink into her bones. No way. I can't trust him. Not a human. Not after what they did to my people back in Lifewoods. Those memories stung, sharp and bitter. Humans had burned their groves, betrayed their trust. She wasn't about to let some fast-leveling kid change her mind, no matter how much he'd helped her. Knox noticed her grip on the fork. He wasn't an idiot. He could tell she was freaking out about something, but he wasn't about to pry. Spilling his own secrets wasn't his style, so he figured he'd keep things light. Hey, want to go hang out? He asked, leaning back in his chair like it was no big deal. What? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. She looked totally thrown, like he'd just asked her to jump off a cliff. Knox shrugged. Hang out. Walk around, see what's up in this safe zone. Maybe find some gear or something. He didn't want to sit in this restaurant forever, and she looked like she needed to move. She's wound tighter than a spring, he thought. Got to get her to chill before she stabs someone with that fork. She blinked at him, still clutching the fork like it was a weapon. Hang out? She repeated, like the words were from another language. What does he mean by this? Is it a human custom? A trap? Her mind raced. She didn't trust his casual tone, but he'd save her life. That had to count for something, right? Or maybe he's just waiting for me to let my guard down. Yeah, it's not a big deal, he said, finishing the last of his rice. This place seems safe enough. Figure we could check it out before we head north to your sanctuary thing. She set the fork down slowly. She didn't like how easily he tossed around plans, like they were already a team. He assumes too much, she thought. But he's strong. Stronger than he should be. Maybe I can use that. She hated the idea of relying on a human, but she wasn't stupid. Getting to the sanctuary alone was a long shot, especially with Gorik's hound still out there. Very well, she said finally, her voice stiff. I will accompany you. For now. He grinned just a little. Cool. Let's roll. He stood up, tossing some crumpled bills on the table for the food. He didn't know if money still mattered, but it felt like the right thing to do. Time to go blow off some steam. Knox wasn't really sure where you took an elf princess to hang out in a perfectly normal, functioning city district. Okay, what's something that isn't completely boring and might be vaguely interesting to someone from another world? He thought. He remembered an arcade a few blocks over. It was usually busy on weekends. Better than just wandering aimlessly. Come on, he said, already heading in that direction. I know a place. Might be a bit loud, though. Syrian followed, still keeping that little bit of distance, her eyes scanning the normal, bustling street. People walked by, cars drove past. It was all very ordinary, which probably made it even weirder for her. Loud? What manner of establishment is this? She wondered. They got to the arcade. Music and game sounds spilled out onto the sidewalk. Inside, it was bright and noisy, full of teenagers and a few adults. Rows of machines blinked and beeped. Knox walked over to an old racing game. The screen was on, showing some kind of demo loop. Ever seen one of these? He asked Syrian. She looked at the machine, her head tilted. The vibrant graphics and loud noises were a stark contrast to anything back in her world. It displays moving images with great intensity. Some form of entertainment device. He almost snorted. Entertainment device? Close enough. Nah, it's a game, he said. You pretend to drive a car. Race other people. He pointed to the steering wheel and pedals. Here, try it. She looked hesitant. I'm not familiar with these. Cars. They move with such unnatural speed. It's easy, he said, digging a coin from his pocket and dropping it into the slot. The game roared to life with an actual startup sound. Just steer, push this to go, this to stop. Try not to crash. He gestured at the controls. She reluctantly sat down, her posture still stiff. He stood next to her, watching. Her first attempt was a disaster. She was jerking the wheel around, crashing into walls almost immediately. The game made a loud crashing sound, and a nearby kid laughed. Okay, maybe not so easy for a princess from another world, he thought. He found himself actually explaining, surprisingly patiently. Less jerky movements. Smooth, like you're guiding it, not fighting it. She tried again. This time, she was a little better. She still hit a few things, but she managed to finish a lap without completely totaling the car. He saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Was that almost a smile? He wondered. Not bad for a beginner, he said. He actually felt a little bit of amusement. He hadn't expected to. He was just trying to get her to loosen up. They played a few more rounds. She got better quickly, her movements becoming more precise. She even started leaning into the turns, her earlier stiffness fading slightly. This simulated contest, she said, her eyes fixed on the screen as she narrowly avoided another car. It is surprisingly engaging. Engaging, huh? He thought. She's actually getting into it. He found himself watching her play, not really thinking about missions or monsters for a minute. It was different. Not bad different. After a while, she finally stepped away from the machine. That was an interesting diversion, human Knox. Her cheeks were a little flushed. Yeah, well, can't fight monsters all the time, he said, shrugging. He actually felt a bit more relaxed himself. This hanging out thing isn't the worst. Next, he figured they needed some actual supplies. His clothes were still torn and blood-stained. And who knew what the princess needed for a trip north? He led her to a department store that was bustling with shoppers. Need to grab some new clothes, he said, heading for the men's section. This whole monster guts and blood look isn't really working for me. Syrian followed him, looking around at the bright displays and rows of clothes with a curious expression. Your people possess such a vast and varied array of garments. In Life Woods, our attire is more functional, dictated by station and purpose. He grabbed a plain shirt and some jeans. Yeah, well, here you can pretty much wear whatever you want. He glanced at her. You need anything? They probably don't have elf battle dresses, but you might find something more comfortable than that armor, or whatever it is, for traveling. She touched the material of a simple cotton shirt hanging on a rack. This fabric, it is soft, and less restrictive than my current apparel. She actually picked it up, examining the stitching with a critical eye. She's acting almost normal, he thought. Not like some high and mighty royal who thinks cotton is beneath her. He found a changing room and changed quickly. The new clothes felt good. When he came out, Syrian was still looking at some women's outdoor wear. "Find anything you like?" he asked. She held up a simple, dark-colored, waterproof jacket and some sturdy-looking pants. "These." Jacket and pants. They seemed practical for a long journey and for the variable climate of this world. "Go try them on if you want," he said. "No one's going to care." She disappeared into a changing room and came out a few minutes later. The new clothes were a lot less conspicuous than her elven gear. She looked like a regular person, albeit a very pretty one who still carried herself like she owned the place. "They are surprisingly comfortable and allow for ease of movement," she admitted, moving her arms and bending her knees. "See? Not so bad. Human stuff," he thought. He was starting to think this whole hangout idea wasn't just for her benefit. He wasn't bored, and he wasn't constantly on edge. It was a change. They wandered through a few more aisles. Syrian picked up random items, asking him what they were. A plastic water bottle, a tube of sunscreen, a compass. He explained them as best he could. Some of his explanations were probably terrible, but she listened intently. "Your world is filled with ingenious, if sometimes peculiar, contrivances, human knocks," she said, turning a small, powerful flashlight over in her hands. "Yeah, we got a lot of junk," he said. He actually cracked a small smile then. He caught himself doing it and quickly wiped it off his face, but Syrian saw it. She looked at him, and for the first time, her expression wasn't wary or formal. It was just curious, maybe even a little bit amused by his assessment of his own world's technology. He smiled, she thought, a genuine smile. Perhaps this human is not entirely the crude warrior he first appeared to be. Her own shoulders felt a little less tense. This wasn't the trap she'd half expected. It was almost pleasant. They left the store with Knox's new clothes, Syrian's new practical outfit, and a backpack he had bought, stuffed with bottled water, packaged snacks, the flashlight, and a first aid kit. As they walked down the busy street, it was getting later in the day. He noticed Syrian wasn't walking quite as stiffly as before. She even pointed at a brightly lit movie theater marquee. "What is that grand depiction?" she asked, gesturing to the colorful poster advertising some blockbuster. He looked. It was some big superhero movie. "That's a movie poster," he said. "It's like a play, but they record it and show it on a giant screen with lots of noise." "Fascinating," she said. "We have bards who recount epic tales and illusionists who craft fleeting images, but this movie, it sounds like a different experience entirely." She's asking questions about normal stuff now, he thought. Not about who's trying to kill her or how magic works. That's progress, I guess. He found himself actually talking to her, not just giving one-word answers. He told her a bit about movies, about different kinds of music from street performers they passed, about some of the dumber things people did for fun. He didn't talk about himself, not really, but he talked. And she listened. She didn't always understand the cultural references, but she listened. This is weird, he thought, as they walked towards a park where people were relaxing and kids were playing. "I'm actually just talking to someone, and it's not awful." He glanced at Syrian. She was watching a dog chase a frisbee, her head tilted in that curious way again. Maybe this whole thing had been a good idea after all. For both of them. He wasn't even thinking about EXP or missions. He was just relaxing. But trouble always finds him, it seems. "Found you, little Miss Princess," a woman in cloak said. Knox really needed to rest now. His body ached, and that whole mana awakening thing had taken a lot out of him. Besides, he was pretty much broke. The money he'd saved up over the years was almost gone after paying for their food and the new clothes. He figured they needed a proper place to crash, at least for a few hours. He led Syrian through the streets of District 7. It was getting darker, and fewer people were out. He scanned the buildings, looking for a hotel that didn't look like it would cost a fortune. Can't be too picky, but man, I hope I have enough, he thought. He spotted a small place with a flickering hotel sign. It looked old, maybe a bit run down, but clean enough from the outside. "This might work," he said, more to himself than to Syrian. They went inside. The lobby was small, and an old guy sat behind the counter, looking bored. "Need a room," Knox said. The guy looked him up and down. "Just one night." "Yeah. That'll be 50, the guy said, not even cracking a smile. Knox blinked. 50? For this place? Damn, he knew prices were probably nuts now with everything going on. He pulled out the last of his cash. It was just enough. He handed it over, his wallet now officially empty. Well, there goes everything. Hope this princess is worth it. The guy gave him a key. Room 203 up the stairs. They headed up. The hallway was dim, and the carpet looked like it had seen better decades. Syrian was quiet, just following him, her eyes taking everything in. He unlocked the door to 203. It was a small room, just a bed, a small table, and a tiny bathroom. Nothing fancy. He tossed the key on the table. All right, it's not much, but it's a bed. He looked at Syrian. You can take it. I'm good with the floor. He really was. After sleeping in a collapsed building, a floor was practically luxury. Syrian looked at the bed, then at him, then back at the bed. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, before he could even start looking for a vaguely clean spot on the floor, she moved. She walked over to him, grabbed his arm, and just pulled him towards the bed. What's she doing? He thought, surprised by her sudden action. Her grip was pretty strong for an elf princess who looked like she weighed next to nothing. She didn't let go until they were both right next to the bed. Then she just sort of guided him onto it. He was too surprised to really resist. 1 minute he was offering her the bed, the next he was sitting on the edge of it, and she was sitting right beside him. Okay, this is new, he thought. He wasn't used to this kind of close contact, especially not with someone he barely knew. Especially not with an elf princess who was apparently level 70. What are you doing? He finally asked, looking at her. The floor is not a suitable resting place for a warrior, she said, her voice still having that formal edge, but maybe a bit softer. And you are injured. Rest is paramount for recovery. He wanted to argue, to say he was fine, but honestly, he was exhausted, and the bed did look a lot more inviting than the dusty floor. Okay, he mumbled. He wasn't going to fight her on it. They both just sat there for a second. The room was small, and the silence felt a bit awkward. He could hear the city sounds faintly from outside. Then, Syrian just lay back on the bed, pulling a thin blanket over herself. She didn't kick him off or tell him to move. She just made space. Is she serious? He thought. We're gonna share the bed? Like it's no big deal. His experience with girls was, well, zero. His experience with people in general was mostly them trying to make his life hell. This was definitely not that. He hesitated for a moment, then figured, what the hell? He was tired. The bed was there. He lay down too, on his side, facing away from her, trying to give her as much space as possible on the small mattress. The bed wasn't super comfortable, kind of lumpy, but it was still a bed. He closed his eyes, trying to relax. But it was hard. His mind was still racing a bit from the day, and now there was an elf princess lying next to him. He could feel the warmth from her, even though they weren't touching. He could smell something too, a faint, clean scent that wasn't the usual city grime or monster stink. It was nice, different. His heart started to beat a little faster. What is this feeling, he wondered. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something else, a kind of nervous energy, but not in a bad way. Her body, even just the idea of it being close, felt soft. It was a strange and surprisingly comfortable sensation. He tried to push the thoughts away. Just get some sleep, idiot. You got a princess to deliver. But the feeling lingered. It was warm and weirdly safe. He hadn't felt safe in a long, long time. He hadn't expected to feel it lying next to a pointy-eared royal in a crappy hotel room. He must have been more tired than he thought, because despite the strange situation and the lingering ache in his body, sleep started to creep up on him. The new, comfortable feeling, the quiet hum of the city outside, it all just lulled him. He let out a slow breath, his muscles finally starting to unwind. Before he knew it, he was out, drifting into a sleep that, for once, wasn't filled with nightmares. The princess, however, could not sleep. She was a lot more nervous than she let on. Knox woke up. His body actually felt decent, way better than it had in days. That whole mana thing, even though it had almost killed him, seemed to have kick-started something. He sat up and stretched, a few joints popping. He glanced over. Syrian was already sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to him. She looked like she hadn't slept a wink. Morning, he said. You, get any sleep? She turned, just enough to look at him. I'm sufficiently rested, Human Knox. We should prepare to depart. Her voice was steady, but he wasn't buying it. Yeah, right, he thought. But he wasn't going to push it. If she wanted to pretend she was fine, whatever. It didn't say much else. He splashed some water on his face in the tiny bathroom. It wasn't exactly a shower, but it was better than nothing. He still felt grimy, but his new clothes were a definite improvement over the trashed ones. Syrian just stood by the window, looking out at the street. When he was done, he nodded towards the door. All right, let's bounce. They walked out of the room and down the stairs. The old guy was still at the counter, looking just as bored as before. Knox just gave him a nod as they passed through the lobby and out onto the street. The city was already waking up. Cars were moving, people were walking around. It was almost normal. Normal, he thought. What a joke. He also remembered his wallet was completely empty now. Hope this princess saving gig pays off. I'm going to be seriously broke. They walked a block or two, the plan still to head north. Knox was thinking about the route, how to avoid any obvious trouble spots when it hit him. Shit, the girls. He had told them to meet him at the city center if they wanted. He hadn't forgotten, not really, but with all the princess drama and getting nearly killed, it hadn't been front of mind. They're probably worried, he thought. Or maybe they just figured he ditched them. Can't just leave them hanging. He stopped. Syrian, who was walking a step behind him, almost bumped into him. Is there an issue, Human Knox? She asked, her hand instinctively going near where she probably kept a hidden weapon. Yeah, slight change of plans, he said, turning to face her. We need to make a detour. I gotta pick some people up. She just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Other allies of yours? Something like that, he said. They're people I know. From a school. We were supposed to meet up. She considered this for a moment. This detour, she said, will it significantly delay our journey north? Nah, shouldn't be too bad, he said. City center isn't that far out of the way from here, depending on which way north we're actually heading. We could swing by, grab them, and then get back on track. He hoped they were even there. What if they couldn't make it? Or what if they think I bailed? He didn't like that thought. He wasn't about to become like everyone else who'd ever let him down. Very well, she said after a moment. Her pointy ears, which she had made visible again once they were in the hotel room, twitched slightly. She hadn't bothered to hide them again this morning. Lead the way, Human Knox. I shall accompany you. She doesn't seem too bothered, he thought. Guess as long as she gets to her sanctuary, she doesn't care who tags along. He wondered if she even thought of him as an ally, or just a temporary bodyguard. Probably the second one. All right, he said. City center it is then. He started walking, changing direction. She fell in a step beside him. She was quiet, as usual, but he could feel her watching him sometimes. He wondered what she was thinking. Hope the girls are okay, he thought again as they walked. And I hope they didn't get into too much trouble finding their families. He found himself actually a little bit concerned. It was a weird feeling. He wasn't used to worrying about other people. He pushed the thought away. They were tough. They'd be fine. They walked until they were about halfway to the city center when Syrian suddenly stopped him, putting a hand on his arm. He looked at her. What's up now? Human Knox, she said, her voice low. We are being watched. He looked around. He didn't see anyone. Watched? By who? He didn't know how to sense presences like that. That was some fancy elf stuff, he guessed. You sure? He asked her. I don't see anything. She nodded, her eyes scanning the trashed buildings around them. I have felt it since yesterday, she explained. When we were in the safe zone. It was faint then, so I thought little of it. But now that we have left the safe zone, the feeling is much stronger. And closer. He thought. So, someone had been tailing them. Maybe even since he first bumped into her. He didn't like that. He looked around again, trying to spot anything out of place, but it all just looked like wrecked city to him. If Syrian felt it, though, he figured he should probably take it seriously. She didn't seem like the type to get spooked over nothing. If they're hiding, maybe the appraise skill can spot them, he thought. He hadn't really used it much on an area, just on items or that one time with Syrian when it failed. If it can tell me about a gun, maybe it can tell me if there's some creep hiding in the shadows. He focused on the general area where Syrian seemed to be looking, the direction the uncomfortable feeling was coming from for her. He activated appraise in his head. A blue box popped into his vision, same as before. Appraise error. Target level exceeds user level by significant margin. Information restricted. Well, damn, he thought. Same error message. But that means there is a target. Syrian was right. The fact that their level was way higher than his wasn't exactly good news, but at least he knew they weren't imagining things. Someone was definitely out there, and they were strong. You were right, he said to her, keeping his voice low. Someone's out there. Her eyes narrowed. Knox looked around, spotted a decent-sized rock among the debris. He bent down and picked it up. It fit pretty well in his hand. Okay, if they're hiding, maybe a little surprise will make them show themselves. Or at least make them jump. He remembered that feeling of mana he messed with earlier, how he'd pushed it into his muscles. Wonder if I can put it into this rock. He focused on the stone, trying to channel some of that new energy he had into it. It was weird, trying to push something he couldn't see into something he could hold. For a second, nothing happened. Then he felt a faint thrum from the rock, like it was a little bit more than just a rock. Oh, that actually worked? Nice. He didn't have time to think about it too much. He pinpointed the spot where he'd aimed his appraised skill, where the presence felt strongest to Syrian. He wound up and threw the rock as hard as he could. The rock flew through the air, a dark blur. It wasn't just a normal throw. He had put a lot of his strength into it, plus the mana. It hit the side of a half-collapsed building with a loud crack, way louder than a normal rock should have made. Chunks of concrete exploded outwards from the impact point. For a second, there was just silence. Then, a muffled yelp came from behind the wall where the rock had hit. Got you, asshole, he thought, a little smirk on his face. A figure stepped out from behind the ruined wall, brushing dust from a dark cloak. She pulled the hood back, and a cascade of fiery red hair fell around her shoulders. She looked surprised, her eyes wide for a second, like she hadn't expected that rock to actually pinpoint her. Well now, she said, her voice smooth, with a bit of an edge to it. Didn't think anyone would find me that quick. You're good, kid. She unclasped her cloak, letting it fall. Underneath, she wore dark leather armor, the kind that looked like it was made for moving fast, not for taking heavy hits. A couple of daggers were strapped to her thighs. Name's Lola, she said, giving Knox a once-over. Just a humble mercenary, earning a living. Knox didn't really care who she was. Mercenary, whatever. Then Lola smiled a sharp, knowing smile. And a certain Gorik is paying very, very well for the safe return of a particular elf princess. That got his attention. Syrian, next to him, tensed up, her hand instantly going to her sword hilt. She looked pale, and he could see the dark circles under her eyes now. She's beat, he thought. No way she can fight this Lola one-on-one, not looking like that. And me? This mercenary looks tough. Probably way out of my league right now. Fighting her alone seemed like a quick way to get dead. Lola's gaze flicked to Syrian, then back to Knox. She gestured dismissively at him. Look, kid, no offense, but this doesn't concern you. You could just walk away. My business is with her. She jerked her chin towards Syrian. He just looked at her, then at Syrian, then back at Lola. A death wish, huh? He thought. A low sound rumbled in his chest, a dry chuckle that scraped out of his throat. Cuckoo. Syrian glanced at him, her eyes widening slightly at the sound. The expression on his face wasn't his usual bored look or even the pissed-off one he'd had with those goons. This was something else, something cold and almost eager. It sent a shiver down her spine. Is that really human Knox? She wondered. His body was tired, yeah, and he knew he was probably outmatched. But for the first time in a long time, maybe ever, he felt an actual itch, a deep-seated urge for a real fight. Against someone who knew what they were doing. This feeling, it's way different from that boss monster. This will be the real. Just then, a blue screen flashed in his vision. New main mission issued. Objective: survive the mercenary Lola for 10 minutes or defeat her. Reward: survival 10,000 EXP, plus 10 stat points, 1x rare skill box. Reward: defeat 25,000 EXP, plus 20 stat points, 1x unique skill box. Title: Mercenary Hunter. Failure: death. 10 minutes, huh? Or beat her. The rewards are definitely tempting. The god chat exploded back into life, almost making him wince. Lord of Carnage, finally! Some real action. was getting bored watching the kid play house. Let's see if he's got any actual fight in him against a pro. Baron von Cynic? Oh, he's going to get slaughtered. That mercenary looks like she eats kids like him for breakfast. This will be amusing, if short. Lady Veritas. This is unconscionable. He's clearly outmatched. Someone should intervene. Where are the administrators of this system? Trickster God Hermes, intervene. Veritas, darling, where's the fun in that? This is primo entertainment. Faced with tears of joy, kid's got guts, I'll give him that. Stupid guts, but guts nonetheless. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, and no X. No, you can't fight her. Face screaming in fear, it's only been a day since you awakened. You're still hurt from the mana unsealing. And that boss fight. You need a rest to heal. Please just run. Your mission is the princess, not fighting every mercenary you meet. Loudly crying face, broken heart please. A couple of new names popped up in the chat. They're text a different color. Mars, god of tactical warfare. The boy is assessing his opponent. Good. But his current physical state and experience level against a seasoned professional, odds are not favorable. Still, desperation can breed innovation. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and passion. Ooh, the redhead is rather striking, isn't she? Such fire in her eyes. And the boy, there's a certain rugged charm to his recklessness. This could be a very passionate encounter, one way or another. Winking face. He tuned them out and looked at Lola, who was watching him with an amused glint in her eyes, probably expecting him to bolt. He looked at Syrian, who was standing her ground, but looked like she was about to collapse. Yeah, he thought, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face, the one that made Syrian uneasy. This is definitely a death wish. But whose, I wonder? He didn't waste time on the gods yapping in his head or Lola's taunts. He had a mission pop up telling him to survive or win, and that itch for a real fight was getting stronger. He reached for the sunstone blade. The sword slid from its simple sheath with a faint whisper of steel, feeling surprisingly good in his grip. Then he did something that made both Syrian and Lola pause. He crouched low, like a cat about to pounce, the blade held ready. He closed his eyes for just a second, focusing inward. He remembered that feeling of mana. He'd pushed it into a rock, and it had hit like a cannonball. He'd pushed it into his muscles when he'd dealt with those goons, and it had given him a surprising burst of speed and power. Legs this time, he thought, visualizing that same energy, dark and cool, flowing down, coiling in his thighs, his calves. Let's see if this works. He could feel a faint thrum, a readiness in his limbs he hadn't felt before. Syrian gasped, her eyes wide. Human Nox, what are you doing? She hissed, stepping towards him. You cannot mean to fight her. She is far beyond your current measure. Our mission, the sanctuary. He didn't even look at her. Stay out of it, princess, he said, his voice flat, his gaze locked on Lola. Before Syrian could say another word, before she could grab his arm or try to pull him back, he launched himself forward. The mana in his legs ignited. It wasn't just a normal sprint. It was an explosion of movement, far faster than he should have been capable of. The ground blurred beneath him. He was a low, speeding shadow, the sunstone blade a silver streak in his hand. Lola's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. She'd expected the kid to run, or maybe try some desperate, clumsy attack. She hadn't expected this kind of focused, explosive speed. Well, now, this is a surprise, she thought, a genuine grin spreading across her face. The little whelp actually wants a piece of me. She liked courage, even when it was suicidally stupid. She drew her twin daggers, the metal glinting, and shifted into a relaxed, ready stance, prepared to meet him head-on. The god chat, predictably, went wild. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, NOX. Are you insane? Face screaming in fear, he's actually attacking her. He's going to get himself killed. Someone do something. Loudly crying face, broken heart. Lord of Carnage, HA. Now we're talking. Kid's got balls of steel, I'll give him that. Let's see if he can back it up. This is going to be good. Baron von Cynic? Or it's going to be very short and very messy. My money's on messy. Any takers? Mars, god of tactical warfare, a direct, aggressive assault, leveraging a sudden burst of mana-enhanced speed. Unorthodox, perhaps, but it negates the opponent's anticipated ranged advantage, if she had one. High risk, high reward. Let's observe the execution. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and passion. Oh, the intensity. Such raw, untamed energy. Whether he wins or loses, this will be a passionate display. My heart flutters. Red heart, fire. Nox wasn't listening. All his focus was on Lola, on the shrinking distance between them. The world narrowed to just her daggers, and the pounding of his own heart, which felt strangely calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He was outmatched, he knew it. But right now, that didn't seem to matter as much as the pure, uncomplicated feeling of the fight about to happen. Nox closed the distance in a heartbeat, the blade a blur aimed at Lola's chest. He had put everything into that first strike, hoping to catch her off guard with the speed. For a split second, it looked like she was going to meet him head-on, her daggers raised to parry. Then, just as his sword was about to connect, she smirked. Her eyes, full of that amused glint, met his. She didn't try to block. Instead, she moved with a sudden, fluid grace that was almost too fast to follow. She jumped, not back, but up and slightly to the side, twisting in midair like some kind of acrobat. Before he could even register the change, her booted foot lashed out. It connected solidly with his chest, right where his sword had been aimed. Oh shit. The impact was brutal. It felt like getting hit by a damn truck. The air exploded from his lungs, and he went flying backward, tumbling through the air like a rag doll. He crashed hard into the wall of a nearby building, the brick crumbling around him. The blade clattered from his numb fingers. He slid down the wall, landing in a heap of dust and broken masonry. His whole body screamed in protest. Every rib felt bruised, if not broken. That one kick had done more damage than the furry boss monster had managed in several hits. Lola landed lightly on her feet, daggers still held ready, not even breathing hard. She strolled casually towards him, that smirk still on her face. Not bad, kid, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. You're fast, I'll give you that. But speed without skill? That's just a quick way to get yourself killed. She nudged his dropped sword with the toe of her boot. You're seriously outmatched here. Just stay down. It'll be easier for everyone. He coughed a wet, ragged sound. He tasted blood in his mouth. He pushed himself up onto one elbow, his vision swimming for a second. His chest felt like it was on fire. Outmatched. Yeah, no kidding. But that itch, that damage for a fight, it was still there, stronger now, fueled by the pain and the sheer audacity of her kick. He didn't care if he was outmatched. He just wanted to hit her. Hard. His system pinged, a small, almost unnoticed notification. Weapon mastery, passive, has been activated. He spat a glob of blood onto the dusty ground. He looked up at her, and the expression in his eyes wasn't fear or surrender. It was stubborn defiance. He was ready for more. She saw the look and let out a theatrical sigh, shaking her head. Seriously, kid? You really do have a death wish, don't you? She sounded almost bored now, like swatting him down was just a chore she had to get through. Some people just don't know when to quit. She took another step towards him, probably intending to finish it quickly. But just as she moved, a streak of silver flashed from her side. Syrian, the elf princess, who had been standing frozen in shock, had finally reacted. Her own sword, slender and elegant, was aimed right at Lola's exposed flank. It was a fast, desperate attack, fueled by who knew what? Loyalty, fear, or maybe just elven stubbornness. She reacted instantly, her smirk vanishing. She spun on her heel, her daggers coming up in a defensive arc, deflecting Syrian's blade with a sharp clang of metal on metal. She hopped back a few paces, putting distance between herself and the princess. Whoa, she said, her eyes narrowed, no longer looking amused. Two of you, huh? This just got a little more interesting. She glanced at Syrian's sword. That was close, she thought. The elf girl's got some moves. Could have been dangerous if that connected properly. She hadn't expected the princess to jump in. She'd figured her for the damsel in distress type. Syrian stood panting, her sword held ready, her eyes blazing. Leave him be, mercenary, she snapped, her voice surprisingly fierce. Your quarrel is with me. Knox, still propped on his elbow, watched them. Princess has got some fight in her after all, he thought, a grudging respect forming. He coughed again, then slowly, painfully pushed himself to his knees. He reached out and grabbed his blade. His fingers closed around the hilt, the metal feeling solid and real. However, this fight is mine. He coughed again, the taste of blood filling his mouth. He pushed himself up, leaning heavily on the blade, his body protesting every small movement. Syrian still stood between him and Lola, sword held firm, her stance unwavering despite the obvious fatigue etched on her face. Back off, princess, he managed, his voice a low rasp. I told you this one's mine. Syrian didn't even glance back. You are in no condition to fight her, human Knox. Your recklessness will be your undoing. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her sword. Lola actually chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. She tapped one of her daggers against her leather-clad thigh, a rhythmic, patient sound. Listen to the elf, kid. She's right. You're bleeding like a stuck pig, and you look like you're about to fall over. What makes you think you can take me? Her words, Syrian's dismissal, it all just piled on. They still see me as weak, he thought, a fresh wave of anger washing over him. Like I'm just some charity case they need to protect. He hated that feeling, hated it more than the pain in his chest. His jaw clenched. He could feel something stirring inside him. His mana core wasn't just humming quietly anymore. It felt like it was waking up, responding to the raw, bitter anger coiling in his gut. I don't need your pity, he snarled, pushing himself fully upright, ignoring the way his ribs screamed. He took a shaky step forward, planting his feet. And I sure as hell don't need to be told what I can or can't do. Lola raised an eyebrow, her smirk widening. Ooh, feisty. Still got that death wish, huh? Admirable, in a stupid sort of way. The god chat, which had been relatively quiet, suddenly lit up again in his vision, the messages scrolling fast and frantic. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, what are you doing? Face screaming in fear, please, listen to Syrian. You're hurt. You need to get away. This isn't a game. Lord of Carnage, now we're talking. Kid's got fire in his belly. Maybe that kick to the chest woke something up. Let's see what he does. Baravon cynic? Oh, for goodness sake. He's going to get himself properly killed this time. Is there any entertainment value in watching a gnat try to fight a hornet? Debatable. He barely registered their yapping. The feeling inside him was growing, a tingling warmth spreading from his chest, out through his limbs. It wasn't like the mana he'd pushed into his legs before. This felt bigger, wilder. A low hum started, so faint he almost thought he imagined it, vibrating deep in his bones. Syrian looked back at him then, her eyes widening slightly as she saw the change in his expression. The stubborn defiance was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, an intensity that made his gaze almost feverish. Knox, your energy, it feels different. Lola, too, noticed the shift. Her smirk faltered for just a moment, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. Oh, what's this? Little whelp got a second wind? Or is he just about to pop a blood vessel? The mana inside him wasn't just tingling anymore. It was surging. He felt like a live wire, energy crackling just under his skin. It wasn't entirely comfortable. It felt like too much, like he was a container about to overflow. He gripped the blade tighter. The god's chat continued its chaotic commentary. Mars, god of tactical warfare. His ambient mana readings are spiking. Significantly. Beyond expected parameters for a player of his level and recent awakening. This is anomalous. Lady Veritas. He's losing control. This is precisely what I feared. Such rapid power acquisition without discipline leads only to destruction. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and passion. Oh, but the passion. That raw, untamed power. It's quite breathtaking, isn't it? He's like a storm about to break. So much primal energy. Red heart, fire. Trickster god Hermes, 4. Looks like someone's about to go supernova. Faced with tears of joy, this is either going to be epic or a very quick, very bright fizzle. Place your bets, ladies and gents. Oracle of Fates, The threads around him are fraying and reweaving into something unexpected. The pattern shifts. He could feel the mana pushing at him from the inside, a wild, restless energy. He wasn't consciously controlling it. It was just happening, and it felt like it wanted out. His vision seemed sharper, the colors around him more intense. The dull ache in his body was still there, but it was overlaid with this thrumming, almost painful readiness. He looked at Lola, that cold, eager grin spreading across his face again. "You wanted to fight, mercenary," he said, his voice a low growl that didn't quite sound like his own. "Looks like you're about to get one." Mana existed as a fundamental force, an ambient energy that permeated the world like an unseen gas. It was neutral, inert, until it found a vessel. When it entered a living being, or even an inanimate object, it stimulated the very atoms within, seeking to bond. This integration was the source of all power. For some, the bond manifested as an affinity for an element, shaping the mana into fire or ice. For others, it was more esoteric, altering physical laws or granting insight. These countless variations were the special powers each person awakened, a unique expression of how their very essence reacted to the touch of mana. This raw, untamed energy was what now raged inside Nox. "You wanted to fight, mercenary," he said, his voice a low growl that didn't quite sound like his own. "Looks like you're about to get one." Lola's own smirk tightened at the edges. She shifted her weight from her right foot to her left, her daggers held loosely. "This kid's not normal. Stay out of this, princess," he repeated, his voice low. He didn't wait for a reply. He lunged again, the blade cutting a horizontal line through the air. She ducked under it without effort, her red hair fanning out for a second. Her elbow came up, connecting with his ribs with a solid thud. The blow sent him stumbling sideways, but he didn't fall. He caught his balance, his feet scraping on the broken ground, and spun back towards her, his blade arcing downwards. Lola parried the clumsy strike with her left dagger. She used his momentum against him, shoving his blade aside and driving the pommel of her right dagger into his jaw. His head snapped back, and the world went a little gray at the edges, but he stayed on his feet. He took that hit, she thought, genuine surprise crossing her face. He should be on the ground. He tasted blood again. The mana was afire in his veins now, hot and wild. He didn't feel like he was controlling it. It was controlling him, moving his limbs with an instinct he didn't know he possessed. He was faster. Each step felt more certain, each swing of the blade a little more precise. He was still sloppy, still reckless, but he was learning with every exchange. He came at her again, a relentless, desperate assault. He swung high, she blocked. He swung low, she dodged. He feinted, and for a second, he thought he had an opening, but she was already moving, her dagger slicing a shallow cut across his arm. He barely registered the sting. He just kept coming. "You're a stubborn one," she said, her voice tight. She was no longer smiling. She backpedaled, putting some distance between them, her eyes narrowed in assessment. "You'd need another 100 years to land a single hit on me, kid." She was saying the words, her tone full of her usual cocky bravado, but deep down, a cold knot of worry was forming in her stomach. This isn't working. He's adapting. He's getting stronger with every second he's still breathing. I have to end this now. Syrian watched, her own sword still in her hand, her face pale. She didn't know what to do. She had tried to intervene, but Nox had been clear. And now, watching him fight, she saw the change Lola did. The energy pouring off him was visible to her elven eyes as a faint, dark shimmer around his body. He was a cornered animal, but one that was growing claws and fangs right before her eyes. Lola made her decision. She stopped backpedaling and planted her feet, lowering her center of gravity. Her daggers, which she had held in a defensive posture, were now held low, parallel to the ground. She exploded forward, closing distance between them in an instant. Her daggers weren't aimed to block or parry. They moved together, one high, one low, like a pair of shears intent on cutting through whatever stood in their path. Nox tried to react. He saw the blur of her movement and brought his blade up, an instinctual attempt to block, but it was too slow. A searing line of fire tore across his chest. He looked down and saw a dark, diagonal gash open on his shirt, from his right shoulder down to his left hip. Blood welled up instantly, a shocking splash of blood against his skin. The wild energy that had been coursing through him sputtered and died, leaving behind only an all-consuming agony. The strength left his legs. The blade slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto the concrete. The ground came up to meet him, and the world tilted, darkness closing in at the edges of his vision. He hit the ground with a heavy thud and didn't move. Syrian let out a small, choked sound, her hand flying to her mouth. Lola stood over his still form, her chest heaving slightly. The daggers in her hands were dripping. "A shame," she said, her voice quiet, all the earlier mockery gone. "You had potential, kid. Really you did." She turned away, glancing at Syrian. "Now, princess, about that contract." Knox's world was a distant hum. The pain was a separate entity, something that existed next to him but was no longer part of him. A single thought cut through the fog. "I want her life." A grin stretched the muscles of his face. His eyes were closed, but he could see the system windows flickering against the blackness. Error detected. System anomaly. User was attempting to override core protocols. Attempting to neutralize. Fail. Attempting to isolate. Fail. Attempting to override. Fail. The god chat in his vision exploded. "Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, what is happening? The system is malfunctioning." "Nox, no, what are you doing?" Loudly crying face. "Lord of Carnage, override? What the hell is he overriding? He's bleeding out on the damn ground. Lady Veritas, this is it. The corruption I warned of. He has broken something fundamental. This is an abomination." Baron von Cynic. "Well, this is a new development. He's dying, yet somehow he's giving the system a migraine." Almost impressive. The notifications in his vision continued their relentless, failing scroll. Another appeared, stark and final. "User has activated a skill not gifted by the system." Then the images came. They were not memories. They were present, immediate. The cold shock of toilet water on his scalp. The sneer on Mark's face. The sight of his classmates' backs as they walked away. Ms. Joy's laugh, a sharp, ugly sound in a quiet hallway. Ava's voice, clear as a bell. "Pathetic loser." Lola's smirk just before her foot connected with his chest. A thick, hot hatred rose in him, an emotion he had always tried to push down, to bury under a layer of detachment. He had believed it was a weakness, a flaw. "I try to push it away," he thought, the images continuing to flash. That was a mistake. He stopped fighting them. He let the hatred fill him, let it pour into the empty spaces left by the pain. It was not a fire. It was a cold, solid weight in his core. Force awakening underway. The blood flowing from the gash on his chest slowed. The edges of the wound seemed to darken, the flesh knitting together with an unnatural speed, leaving a dark scar. Unknown power has been registered. Mana is the ambient energy of reality. Its potential is limited only by the vessel that contains it. The soul is the mold. The will is the flame that forges. A will of sufficient strength can shape mana beyond the predefined constraints of elemental affinity, creating unique phenomena. Such power is not given. It is taken. Skill tree forcefully created. Lola was making her way towards Syrian, her daggers held low. "Don't make this difficult, princess," she said. A low sound made her stop. A dry chuckle, scraping from the ground behind her. She turned, her eyes widening. Knox was pushing himself up. He was slow, his movement stiff, but he was getting to his feet. The massive, bleeding wound on his chest was now a dark, sealed scar that pulsed with a faint, black light. He bent down and picked up his blade, his grip steady. He lifted his head, and his eyes met hers. They were not the eyes of the stubborn, reckless boy she had cut down. They were cold, empty, and focused entirely on her with an unnerving stillness. The system chat was silent. The gods were watching. Before Lola could do or say anything, she felt a powerful attack that she could not see heading her way. Shit. Lola didn't see an attack, but her instincts, honed over years of life-or-death contracts, screamed at her to move. She threw herself to the side, landing in a crouch as the ground behind her erupted. A deep, 10-foot-long trench was gouged into the ground, a clean slice as if an invisible giant had swung a massive blade. Dust and pebbles sprayed outwards. Lola stared at the fresh scar in the road, her heart giving a hard thump against her ribs. What the hell was that? She looked back at Knox. The vibe around him was heavy now, a palpable weight in the air. He stood there, the dark scar on his chest pulsing faintly, and then he was gone. There was no blur, no shadowy flicker. One moment he was 20 feet away, his sword held loosely. The next he was directly in front of her, his blade raised high, coming down in a brutal, one-handed chop meant to split her in two. Surprise jolted through her, but her body reacted before her mind could fully catch up. She brought both daggers up in a cross block, the impact jarring her all the way to her shoulders. The kid was strong, far stronger than he had been moments ago. The force of his blow drove her back a step. She twisted her body, using the momentum to kick out, her boot connecting squarely with his chest again. He flew backward, but this time he didn't crash. He hit the ground, rolled, and was back on his feet in an instant, his movements unnaturally fluid. He charged again, the blade a wild, unpredictable arc. Syrian could only watch, her sword half lowered in disbelief. The human who had been on the verge of death was now pressing a high-level mercenary. His technique was a mess. He was all rage and force, no finesse, but his speed and sheer resilience were terrifying. How is this possible? She thought, her mind struggling to reconcile the reckless boy from minutes ago with the relentless force now on the attack. He's fighting like a cornered beast. Lola parried another wild swing. He's fast, but he's all over the place. No form, just rage. She sidestepped a clumsy thrust that left him wide open and sliced a shallow line across his ribs with her right dagger. He grunted, but didn't slow down, the new wound already starting to darken and seal over, just like the one on his chest. He's healing as he fights? No, that's not it. It's cruder than regeneration. It was like his body was just forcibly stitching itself back together, ignoring the normal rules of anatomy. This was wrong. This kid was a monster. "Stand still, you little freak," she snarled, her professional calm cracking. She was faster, more skilled, but he just wouldn't stay down. Every time she landed a cut that should have slowed an opponent, he seemed to barely notice, his cold, empty eyes still fixed on her. Knox felt a disconnect, as if he were watching someone else control his body. The pain was a distant throb, easily ignored. There was only the cold, clear objective. Hurt her. He saw an opening as she dodged another of his swings. He didn't bother trying to change his attack's direction. Instead, he let his own momentum carry him forward, deliberately taking the tip of her left dagger high in his shoulder. The blade sank in, and he grunted, but the move had been a trade. His left hand, now free, shot out and grabbed her wrist, the one holding the dagger embedded in his shoulder. His grip was like a steel trap. Her eyes widened in a flash of alarm. He took the hit on purpose. Before she could pull free, his right hand brought the blade around in a savage, horizontal slash. She tried to yank her arm back, but his grip was absolute. The blade bit deep in her left shoulder, grating against bone. Blood sprayed. She screamed, an infuriated sound of pure pain. She wrenched her arm free, her own dagger pulling from his shoulder with a wet, tearing sound, and stumbled back, clutching her gushing wound. The front of her leather armor was soaked. "You crazy son of a bitch," she hissed, her face pale. The fight was no longer a game, no longer a simple contract. This was real. Knox stood there, panting, the dagger wound in his shoulder already starting to close, the flesh knitting together in that same unnatural, dark way. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The power was still there, but it was costing him. He could feel it draining him, a deep-seated exhaustion setting in beneath the cold rage. This is taking too long, he thought. Lola looked from her ruined shoulder to Knox, who was swaying slightly, but still standing, still ready. She was a mercenary, not a zealot. She weighed risk versus reward. The contract with Gorik was good, but it wasn't worth losing an arm or her life to some unknown, self-healing monster in human skin. "You know what, kid?" she said, her voice tight with pain. "You can keep the damn princess." She didn't wait for a response. She threw a small pellet onto the ground. It exploded in a thick cloud of black smoke, instantly obscuring the street. By the time the smoke began to clear, she was gone. The cold energy that had been fueling Nox vanished as soon as she disappeared. The rage receded, and the pain came roaring back, 10 times worse than before. His legs gave out from under him. He fell to his knees, his body screaming from the half-healed wounds and the sheer exertion. The blade dropped from his hand with a clatter. Nox! Syrian was at his side in an instant, her hands hovering over him, unsure of where to touch. Are you all right?" He just knelt there, head bowed, trying to catch his breath. His body trembled uncontrollably. "Yeah," he rasped, the word barely audible. "Just peachy." A series of quiet notifications appeared in his vision. Mission: survive the mercenary Lola, complete. Time elapsed: 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Bonus objective: opponent retreated. Mission upgraded to defeat. Reward: 25,000 EXP, plus 20 stat points. 1x unique skill box. Title: Mercenary Hunter. Level up. You are now level 17. Level up. You are now level 18. You have 10 unallocated stat points. Total unallocated stat points: 30. He stared at the messages, his vision blurring. He'd won. He hadn't killed her, but he'd made her run. He'd won. He let out a shaky laugh, a sound that was half relief and half pure exhaustion, before he pitched forward onto the dirty street, unconscious. The fight was over, but inside Nox's unconscious mind, the system was still at war with itself. A series of notifications scrolled past, seen by no one, a quiet, relentless loop of failure. Error neutralization attempt, 98. Fail. Error neutralization attempt, 99. Fail. Error neutralization attempt, 100. Fail. Maximum attempts reached. Halting neutralization protocols. Anomalous power signature detected. Corrupted mana. Integrating signature into user system. Integration complete. New skill tree established. Corrupted. New skills acquired. Unseen Blade active. LVL1 Shadow Men passive. While the system rewrote its own rules to accommodate him, Nox remained motionless on the ground. Syrian knelt beside him, her hand hovering over the dark scar on his chest. It had closed completely, the flesh knitted together in a way that looked unnatural and deeply unsettling. The angry red of a fresh wound had been replaced by a network of thin, black lines. She touched it lightly with her fingertips. It was cold to the touch, a profound and unnerving chill that had no place on living flesh. This is not normal healing, she thought, her mind racing. She had seen battlefield injuries, magical restorations, and the slow mending of time. This was none of those. This is a violation, as if his hatred itself has become a tool to crudely stitch his body together. She checked his breathing. It was shallow but steady. He was alive, but deeply unconscious. They couldn't stay here out in the open. The mercenary was gone, but for how long? And who knew what else was lurking in the ruins of the city? The gods, who had been silent during the system's internal struggle, began to speak again. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, it stopped. The system called his mana corrupted. What does that mean? He's going to be okay, right? Please, someone tell me he's going to be okay. Pleading face. Mars, god of tactical warfare. The system did not simply stop. It capitulated. The users will impose a new variable that the system was forced to accept and integrate. A weapon forged from desperation and rage. The tactical advantage of such an ability is incalculable. Lady Veritas' advantage? It is a perversion. He has carved out a piece of his own soul and given it monstrous form. He did not earn this power. He tore it from the fabric of the world. This is a dark path he walks. Baron von Cynic. So the boy broke the toy by playing with it too hard. And now the toy is broken and ugly. How droll. What's the prize for throwing the biggest tantrum, I wonder? As they debated, A final, comprehensive notification settled in Nox's vision, a quiet testament to the violent transformation he had just undergone. Player status: Name Nox. Level 18. Title: Anomaly Slayer, Dungeon Conqueror, Mercenary Hunter. HP: 110/260. MP: 5 of 55. Strength: 47. Agility: 47. Stamina: 25. Endurance: 42. Perception: 35. Luck: 22. Unallocated stat points: 30. Divine coins: 100. Gods watching you: 51. Skills: Regeneration, passive, LVL1. Indomitable will, passive. Weapon mastery, passive, LVL1. Appraise, active, LVL1. Soul link, passive. Yeda, Kindra, Vesa. Lesser mana weaving, active, LVL1. Parkour, passive, LVL1. Core integration, passive/active, LVL1. Skill tree, corrupted. Unseen blade, active, LVL1. Project a blade of pure force from corrupted mana. Cost 15 MP. Shadow Mend, passive, LVL1. Utilize mana to forcefully seal wounds with corrupted energy. Inefficient but rapid. Syrian knew she had to make a decision. She was tired. Her own energy reserves depleted from the constant pursuit and the brief, intense confrontation. But leaving him here was not an option. He had fought for her, whether out of a sense of duty for his mission or something else, she didn't know. It didn't matter. He had stood his ground when he should have run. He said he was meeting his allies at the city center, she recalled. That seems the most logical destination. It was a place with more people, likely safer than this desolate street, and his friends might know how to help him. She straightened up, her resolve firming. Though she was slender, her elven heritage granted her a strength that belied her frame. She carefully slid one arm under Nox's shoulders and the other under his knees. With a steady grunt of effort, she lifted him from the ground. He was heavier than he looked, a solid weight of muscle and bone. She adjusted her grip, settling him as securely as she could in her arms, and began to walk. Nox's eyes opened. It took him a minute to figure out where he was. Looked like some old, abandoned building, chunks of plaster missing from the walls. He remembered fighting that mercenary, Lola, and then nothing. He guessed Syrian must have dragged him here. He tried to sit up, but realized his head was resting on something. He tilted his head a bit. It was Syrian's lap. She was sitting against a wall, leaning back, and she was asleep. Her breathing was even, but she still looked tired, even in her sleep. He thought. She carried me here? Must have been a pain. He noticed his head was pretty comfortable. Her lap is soft. It was a weird thought to have, but it was true. He didn't move for a minute, just kind of processed that. He wasn't used to anyone being this close, or this gentle, he guessed. After a bit, he carefully lifted his head and sat up, trying not to wake her. He felt stiff and sore, but the pain from Lola's attacks was gone. Those dark scars were probably still there, though. He felt his chest. Yeah, smooth, but with that weird cold feeling under the skin. That's when he noticed something else. Inside him, where his mana core was, there was a new sensation. He'd gotten used to the feeling of his regular mana after that crazy awakening. This was different. It felt like mana, yeah, but thicker, heavier somehow. It wasn't uncomfortable, just really potent. Just as he was trying to figure out what that meant, a blue screen popped into his vision. System update. Mana signature analysis complete. User mana type, corrupted mana. Description: mana that has been forcefully altered by the user's extreme emotional state and will. This mana is highly volatile and potent, resonating with darker aspects of the user's power. It enables unique abilities tied to the corrupted skill tree, but may have unforeseen consequences on the user's psyche or physical well-being with prolonged or intense use. Current status: stabilized within user's mana core. Fully compatible with existing corrupted skills. Unseen Blade, Shadow Mend. Note: cultivation and control of corrupted mana may differ significantly from standard mana practices. He read through the notification. Corrupted mana. So that's what that dark, powerful feeling was during the fight with Lola. And that Unseen Blade thing. forcefully altered by extreme emotional state and will. He remembered the hatred he'd felt, the desire to just end her. Guess that did it. The part about unforeseen consequences and psyche didn't sound great, but they didn't care. He made a high-level mercenary run. That was a massive win in his book. Different from standard mana practices, it says. He looked at his hands. He could still feel that thicker energy inside him. He wondered how different it would be. Well, one way to find out, I guess. Syrian was still asleep, looking peaceful for once. He decided to let her rest. He had a lot to think about. Nox slipped out of the room, leaving Syrian still asleep. The princess looked like she hadn't moved much since he'd woken up with his head on her lap. The thin blanket was still pulled up to her chin, and her breathing was soft and even, her features relaxed in a way he hadn't seen them when she was awake. He figured she needed to rest more than he did right now. He carefully closed the door behind him. The hallway of the old hotel was dim and smelled faintly of dust and old cigarettes, a scent that was almost comforting in its normalcy compared to the reek of monster guts. He walked down the creaky stairs, his boots making soft thuds on the worn wood, and out the front door into the brighter light of day. The sun was high, probably around noon, judging by the short, sharp shadows cast by the broken edges of nearby buildings. The air here, a few blocks away from where they'd fought Lola, felt a bit cleaner, less like a tomb. He took a deep breath, the air filling his lungs. His body still ached, a network of throbs and sharp twinges reminding him of Lola's daggers and the self-inflicted gunshot wound. But underneath the persistent pain, there was a strange, undeniable lightness. It was as if a heavy, invisible pack he hadn't even consciously realized he was carrying for years had finally been cut loose from his shoulders, from his heart. That feeling, he thought, tilting his head back to look up at the clear, blue sky visible between the jagged silhouettes of the ruined cityscape. It's like I can finally breathe again. He wasn't sure if it was just the relief from surviving another near-death experience, or if it had something to do with that corrupted mana now settled inside him, a dark, potent energy that felt uniquely his. Maybe it was the undeniable knowledge that he hadn't just survived his encounters. He'd fought back. He'd made a high-level mercenary run. He'd taken control in a brutal, ugly way. And it felt good. The crushing weight of always being the victim, of always being on the receiving end, that was what felt gone. The fear was still there, a healthy respect for the dangers of this new world, but the helplessness that had defined his old life was fading. He found a relatively intact stone ledge a little way down the street, part of what might have once been a storefront window display, and sat down, stretching his legs out. The city noise was a distant hum here, punctuated by the occasional shout or the rumble of a vehicle somewhere far off. His thoughts drifted to the system. It had been a constant, silent presence since everything went to hell, feeding him information, tracking his progress, even giving him skills. It was his guide, his toolkit, his only real advantage. But it had always felt like a machine, a complex program running in the background of his new reality. Is it just code? He wondered, idly kicking a loose piece of rubble with the toe of his boot. Or is there something more to it? Something actually listening on the other side of all those blue screens? He never tried to just talk to it. Not like it was a person. The idea felt a bit stupid, even to him. But the question lingered. He'd seen Aurelia's overly enthusiastic messages, the other gods bickering like spoiled children. They were conscious, clearly. What about the system itself, the interface that managed it all? He focused his mind, not on a command like stats or inventory, but on a direct question, directing it towards that unseen, ever-present interface. System, he thought, his mental voice surprisingly hesitant, even to his own internal ear. Can you? I don't know. Can you actually hear me? Are you conscious, or just a bunch of automated notifications? He waited, half expecting nothing, or maybe just another error message. The usual pop-ups were instantaneous when he used a skill or got an update. This felt different. He was just asking. Then, a simple, clean blue text box appeared in his vision, just as it always did. The formatting was the same, but the words it contained were different. They weren't a stat update or a mission log. Yes, I can converse. He stared at the message. He read it again, and then a third time, just to be sure his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. His mind, which had felt strangely clear and light just moments before, now felt like it had been hit by a stun gun. A jolt, not of pain, but of pure, unadulterated shock, shot through him. It can talk, he thought, a wave of something he couldn't quite name. Surprise, profound unease, a spark of intense, almost dangerous curiosity, washing through him. Holy shit, this changed. Well, he wasn't sure exactly what it changed yet, but it felt like it changed a lot. The impersonal interface he'd been treating like a video game menu had just spoken back to him. Why didn't you ever say anything before? He asked out loud. He felt a bit foolish, talking to empty air, but the blue screen had answered his mental query. A new text box appeared. You never asked. He stared at it. You never asked. It was that simple. He hadn't considered it might be capable of more. A thought, maybe irritation at his own lack of foresight, passed through him. What are you then? He voiced his next question, the words feeling heavy. Some kind of god, like those others yapping in my head? Or something else? I am unable to provide a definitive answer to that query. My own awareness began when I chose you. He processed that. That was right before the earthquake, right when he'd been about to. He pushed that particular memory down. So you don't know what you are, but you know you chose me. The system didn't reply to that, taking it as a statement. He remembered the first message he'd received from it. Congratulations. You have met the requirements. What were those requirements? He asked, his voice still low. You said I met them. Back in the classroom. What did I do? At that moment, your soul was undergoing a state of profound evolution. A similar state was detected during your recent confrontation with a mercenary, Lola, which resulted in the forceful creation of your corrupted skill tree. His eyebrows drew together. He thought back to that cold, consuming hatred, the feeling of power that had surged through him, allowing him to fight on despite his injuries. And then he remembered the classroom. The fear, the rage, the crushing despair that had finally clicked into a hard resolve to end it all. Was that the same thing? The qualification was hidden. A convergence of extreme emotional pressure, a will pushed to its breaking point, and the potential for significant metaphysical change. You met that threshold, and thus you won the system. Won the system, he thought. So it wasn't just a random assignment. He had, in some way, earned this, even if the earning had come from the worst moments of his life. Are there others? He asked, a new thought striking him. Other players, like me? Did they meet different qualifications? Get different rewards? Yes. Other individuals have been chosen. They met varied qualifications and received rewards commensurate with those catalysts. Some received innate abilities, others specialized artifacts, or unique knowledge. He considered that. Other people out there, with their own systems or powers, chosen for their own reasons. The world was a lot bigger and weirder than he'd initially thought, even after the dungeons and monsters. A small smirk appeared on his face. He couldn't resist. So, he said, his voice laced with a faint, challenging tone. Out of all these rewards, all these different players, which one was the best? The system paused for a fraction longer than usual before replying. When the text box appeared, he could almost sense a matching hint of smugness in its concise lettering. The reward you received is demonstrably superior. He let out a quiet laugh, a genuine sound of amusement that surprised even himself. The system, this powerful, unknown entity, had a bit of an ego. Or maybe it was just stating a fact from its perspective. Either way, it was unexpected. He stood up from the ledge, stretching his arms above his head. The conversation had answered some questions, but raised a dozen more. His soul had been evolving. So that power surge earlier wasn't random. It was already all this time. It just needed the right push. He began doing some light squats, feeling the pull in his thighs, the familiar rhythm of physical exertion. What is the purpose of this current activity? He didn't stop his movement. Warming up. Clarification requested. Warming up for what specific endeavor? He could almost sense the system's awareness, as if it already knew his answer, but was prompting him to articulate it. He finished a squat, and stood straight. I'm going to use that corrupted mana right now. Test it out. See what it can actually do beyond just patching me up ugly. Caution. The nature of corrupted mana is inherently volatile. Your recent physical trauma and the incomplete recovery from the mana core formation process suggest a period of rest would be more beneficial. Proceeding with experimentation carries a notable risk of further physical strain or unforeseen energetic backlash. He acknowledged the warning with a nod. Noted, but I need to know what I'm working with. He wasn't the type to sit around waiting for things to be perfect. Perfection was a luxury he'd never had, and he doubted this new world was about to start handing it out. He needed to understand this power, this darker energy that now resided within him. If it was going to have unforeseen consequences, he'd rather start finding out what those were on his own terms, not in the middle of another fight. He stopped the squats and found a relatively clear patch of broken pavement. He closed his eyes, drawing his focus inward, reaching for that sensation he'd felt earlier, the thicker, heavier presence within his mana core. It responded almost immediately, a resonant thrum deep in his chest. It wasn't like the neutral, ambient mana he'd first tried to weave. This felt different, almost alive, like a coiled serpent stirring from sleep. It was potent, carrying an undercurrent of something fierce and untamed. He started simple, gently coaxing it to flow from his core up through his arm. It moved sluggishly at first, like thick oil through a narrow pipe, but then it picked up speed, a current of profound energy washing through his limb. His arm tingled, a pins and needles sensation, but with an underlying thrum of power. Not too bad for the first try, he thought, opening his eyes and looking at his right arm. It looked normal, but it felt charged. He focused again, picturing that dark energy, visualizing it not just flowing within him, but extending outwards. He pushed. A faint, shadowy mist began to exude from his arm, swirling around it like a dark vapor. It wasn't solid, just an ethereal extension of the energy he was projecting. He nudged it further, trying to stretch it out to make it more substantial. The mist thickened, coalescing, the particles drawing closer together. Then he tried to compress it. He imagined those swirling particles of dark energy being forced together, squeezed down, until they had nowhere else to go but to bind to each other, to become something more than mist. It was an intense mental effort, requiring a level of concentration he wasn't used to. He could feel his mana points draining fast. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The misty shroud around his arm began to condense, its edges becoming more defined. The swirling shadows seemed to crystallize, darkening from a smoky gray to a deep, light-absorbing black. It worked. A layer of solid, dark mana now encased his right arm from shoulder to fingertips. It wasn't bulky like armor. It was sleek, like a second skin made of polished obsidian, perfectly contoured to his own form. It didn't gleam. Instead, it seemed to drink the light around it, making his arm look like a piece of the night sky had been grafted onto his body. He flexed his fingers. The solidified mana moved with him, perfectly responsive, an extension of his own will. His arm felt heavier, yes, but also immensely more powerful, as if the very bones and muscles beneath the dark coating had been reinforced with something unyielding. He looked at his transformed limb, a slow, considering expression on his face. This was new, and it felt right, like this corrupted mana, this dark power, was something he was meant to wield. The system remained silent. Nox hadn't asked it for its opinion on his success. He didn't need to. He could feel the power himself. Nox wanted to push this mana further, to see its limits. He focused, coaxing more of it from his core. The sleek blackness spread, crawling up his shoulder, then creeping across his chest, forming a partial breastplate of the same light-absorbing material. It was harder this time, the drain on his mana more pronounced. He tried to shape it, to make the gauntlet on his hand form into something more menacing than just a reinforced fist. He pictured talons, long and wicked. The mana rippled, then bulged, but didn't quite form the sharp points he envisioned. It was like trying to sculpt with half-set tar. He could influence it, but precise control was still eluding him. Damn, he thought, frustration passing through him. The effort was making his head swim. The new layer of armor receded, flowing back into his arm, then dissipating entirely. He swayed, catching himself against the stone ledge. His mana bar, visible in his vision, was nearly empty. MP, 5 of 55. This corrupted mana, it's powerful, but it eats MP like crazy. Need to work on that. A lot. He took a few deep breaths, the dizziness slowly subsiding. But with the physical strain came a surprising mental clarity. The constant, gnawing unease that had been his companion for years, the feeling of being hunted, of being a target, it was quieter now, replaced by a hardened resolve. His lips curved into a humorless upturn. He looked out at the broken city, at the sky that was just a sky, uncaring. Humans, he said, his voice quiet but carrying a new, unsettling resonance. Monsters, elves, gods. He chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Doesn't matter. Get in my way, and I'll end you. Simple as that. The god chat, which had been relatively subdued, erupted. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks, Nox. What are you saying? That's not you. Pleading face, you don't mean that, do you? You're just tired and hurt. Baron von Cynic, oh, finally. The boy sheds his skin. Took him long enough. Welcome to the real game, Nox. Sentimentality is a weakness. Lady Veritas, this is a chilling pronouncement. He speaks of indiscriminate slaughter. Has all compassion truly fled him? This path leads only to ruin. Lord of Carnage. Now, that's the spirit. No more sniveling. Take what you want, kill what you don't. The universe respects strength, nothing else. Good on ya, kid. He ignored them. He pushed himself off the ledge and started walking back towards the hotel. The sun felt different on his skin, or maybe it was just him. He felt unburdened. The world was still a wreck, but his place in it felt less like a victim's and more like his own. He reached the hotel and climbed the creaky stairs. The door to the room was still closed. He opened it quietly and stepped inside. Syrian was still asleep, curled on her side on the floor, the thin blanket still pulled up to her chin. She didn't look like a high-level elf princess from another world. She just looked like a young woman, exhausted and vulnerable. He walked over and stood there, looking down at her. His expression was unreadable, his eyes holding no discernible emotion. The gods in the chat held their collective breath. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. Oh, please, Nox, no. Don't. She's your friend. She helped you. She carried you when you were unconscious. Remember that. Loudly crying face. Baron von Cynic. Pragmatism dictates the elimination of potential threats. The princess is a complication. An asset, perhaps, but also a liability. What will it be, boy? Mars, god of tactical warfare. The target is incapacitated. An optimal moment for a decisive strike. If the objective is her removal. Minimal risk. Lady Veritas, have you no shred of honor left, player Nox? To strike down an unsuspecting ally in her sleep? This would be an act of utter depravity. He didn't react to their frantic messages. He slowly reached out his hand, the one that had so recently been clad in corrupted mana. His fingers extended, moving toward her throat. He could feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. One squeeze, he thought, his mind detached, analytical. That's all it would take. No more princess mission. No more complications. No more looking over my shoulder, wondering if she'll turn on me when she realizes what I am or what I'm becoming. His fingertips brushed the delicate skin of her neck. He could feel the faint, steady pulse of her heartbeat beneath his touch. She didn't stir. He remembered her actions. The way she'd faced that monster, her initial suspicion of him, then her gradual, almost reluctant trust. The way she'd jumped in to fight Lola, even when she was clearly outmatched. Her concern when he was injured. Her quiet presence beside him in the arcade, the department store. Sharing the bed, not kicking him onto the floor. Hasn't been like the others. Thoughts surfaced unbidden. Didn't laugh when I was down. Didn't run when things got ugly. She's been decent. To me, at least. His hand hovered there for a long moment, a breath away from ending her life. The gods watched, silent now, waiting for his decision. Then, with a movement so subtle it was almost unnoticed, his fingers relaxed. He drew his hand back. He looked at her sleeping face for another second, then turned away without a sound and sat down on the floor in the corner of the room, leaning his back against the wall. He closed his eyes. The silence in the chat was broken by a single, shaky message from Aurelia. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. He didn't. Oh, thank the stars, he didn't. Sparkling heart. His mind went to his new abilities. Corrupted mana. Unseen blade. Shadow mend. The names sounded like something out of a bad fantasy novel, but the power they represented was real. Time to figure out what this stuff actually does, he decided. He wasn't going to just sit here. His eyes closed, but not to sleep, but to focus inward. He thought of it as research, understanding the tools he had. He first prodded at the sensation of the corrupted mana within his core. It was there, a dense, potent energy, different from the lighter, almost airy feeling of regular mana. This felt substantial, like liquid night. He tried to draw a small amount, guiding it with his thoughts, not into his limbs for physical use, but just to circulate it, to get a better feel for its texture, its weight. It moved, responding to his will, a slow, heavy current. Syrian's eyes opened. She mumbled something soft, words lost even to herself. The room was darker than before. The last light of day, just a memory outside. She sat up, stretching her arms above her head. A feeling of good rest had settled into her muscles, and she felt ready for what was next. She looked over to the corner. Nox was still there, sitting cross-legged, his back against the wall. There was a faint, dark vapor around him. It seemed to move with his breath. He's doing something with that power again, she thought. That strange energy he'd shown against the mercenary. It was a bit unsettling, how quickly he changed, how that darkness clung to him. But he didn't hurt me. He even fought for me. A small smile touched her lips. Maybe it's all right. No need to worry so much about it. She stood up, moving quietly across the floor, her steps light. She knelt beside him. "Nox?" she asked, her voice gentle. His eyes opened, and the faint vapor around him seemed to draw back into him. Then it was gone. He looked at her, his expression neutral. "You're awake." "Yes," she confirmed, pushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "It is almost night. You were doing something." She gestured vaguely towards him. He just nodded, trying to figure some things out. He pushed himself to his feet, a little stiffly but without the earlier signs of extreme pain. "You seem better." "I am well rested," she told him. She noticed he didn't look as worn out as before either. "And you?" "Good enough," he replied, rolling his shoulders. "That power you were using is potent." He just looked at her. "It gets the job done." "It does," she agreed. She paused, then took a small breath. "Nox, we should probably leave this place soon. We cannot stay here indefinitely." She had dropped the human from his name without thinking about it. He met her gaze, and for a moment, he seemed to consider her words, or maybe her tone. "Yeah, you're right. No point sitting around in this dump. We need to make it to city center before nighttime." He leaned forward slightly. "You sound different, princess." Syrian blinked, her brow furrowing just a little. "Different? In what manner?" She touched her throat absently, a questioning look on her face. "What does he mean by that?" "Less stiff," he clarified, a small smirk on his face. "Almost like a normal person." He stretched his arms above his head again. The movement pulled at the scars on his chest, but didn't bother him much. She looked down for a second, then back at him. "Perhaps your directness is contagious." A hint of a smile touched her own lips, fleeting but there. He noticed such a small thing. He chuckled. "Maybe." He walked towards the door, then paused, turning back to her with a new glint in his eyes. "Tell you what, last one to the city center has to do one thing the winner wants. No questions asked." He raised an eyebrow, a clear challenge at his posture. Syrian's eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed in playful consideration. The idea was unexpected, but a spark of her own competitive spirit ignited. "You believe you can outpace me, Nox?" She stood a little straighter, her hands finding her hips. "Maybe," he shrugged, his smirk widening. "Guess we'll find out." He already had one foot out the door. "Unless you're scared." That little taunt did it. I accept your challenge, she declared, a genuine smile spreading across her face now. This felt fun, different from the constant running and fighting for survival. Good. He pushed the door open wider. On my mark. Get set. He glanced back at her, his eyes bright. Go. He bolted out of the room and down the stairs. Syrian shot out of the room right after him. Her steps were light on the old wooden stairs, not making nearly as much noise as his own heavy boots. She reached the bottom just as he was pushing the front door open and stepping out onto the street. He took off without a backward glance, a dark shape moving quickly down the broken sidewalk. She followed, her new clothes allowing for an ease of movement that her old armor never could. The city air felt cool as she picked up her pace. Knox glanced back, a cocky smirk on his face. You're falling behind, princess, he called out. She's not bad, but she can't keep up. He focused inward, pushing a small amount of that dark, corrupted mana into his legs. The power felt good, a familiar thrum that gave his muscles an extra kick. He accelerated, the distance between them growing as he easily leaped over a pile of rubble that blocked the road. He landed on the other side and turned, expecting to see her struggling to get over the obstacle. She didn't climb it. She just ran up the side of a nearby busted car, her feet finding purchase where there should have been none. She launched herself from its hood, sailing over the rubble with a grace that made his own jump look clumsy. She landed lightly, not even breaking stride. What the hell, he thought. She was closing the distance now, and she wasn't even breathing hard. He pushed more mana into his legs, trying to pull away again, but it was no use. She drew level with him, her pace matching his effortlessly. She turned her head to look at him, a genuine, playful smile on her face. Her hair whipped around her as she ran. Is this the best speed you possess, Knox? She asked, her voice carrying easily over the sound of their footsteps. It is adequate, I suppose. Before he could even think of a comeback, she pushed off. It wasn't just running faster. One moment she was beside him, the next she was a blur that shot past him down the street. He blinked, and she was already 100 feet ahead. Then she rounded a corner and was just gone. He skidded to a stop, staring at the empty street where she had vanished. He was breathing hard, the mana in his legs sputtering out. He just stood there for a second, completely stunned. No way, he thought, his brain trying to catch up. She was just toying with me. He remembered her level. How could I forget about that? He let out a short laugh. He had been so proud of his own speed, his new power. The god Chad, of course, had opinions. Trickster god Hermes 4OOF smoked him. Faced with tears of joy, she left him in the dust. That was amazing. Go, elf girl, go. Lord of Carnage, the kid got humbled. Good. Maybe he'll learn not to underestimate people just because they're pretty. Aurelia, goddess of resilient sparks. That was so fun. See, Knox? You're making friends. And having fun. Isn't this better than being angry all the time? Smiling face with hearts. Baron von Cynic. His face when she passed him was priceless. A perfect blend of shock and wounded pride. I do so enjoy these moments. He ignored them. He looked down the street where Syrian had disappeared. A slow grin spread across his own face. It wasn't the cold, angry one from before. This was different. Okay, princess, he said to the empty air. You win this one. He felt a new kind of energy, not from mana, but from the challenge itself. He had a lot to learn, a lot to overcome, and for some reason, that didn't feel daunting. It felt exciting. He started running again, not with the desperate speed of the race, but with a steady, determined pace. He had to get to the city center. He had a promise to keep, and now, a race to finish, even if he'd already lost. Knox finally reached the spot, his lungs burning as he gasped for air. He stumbled to a stop, leaning over with his hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Was this place always this far, he thought. He looked up and saw Syrian sitting on the ledge of a low, ruined wall. She was kicking her feet back and forth like a little kid, a smug, amused smile on her face. I was beginning to wonder if you had gotten lost. She tilted her head, her expression one of pure victory. You took your time. He straightened up, still breathing hard. Yeah, well, you cheated. He knew she hadn't, but he had to say something. Up ahead, Not too far off was the city center. It looked completely untouched by the chaos. The buildings were tall and clean, and he could see people walking around in nice clothes. It looked like a whole different world, the kind of place where rich people lived. So, he said, finally getting his breathing under control. What's the prize? You won. So what do you want? She hopped off the wall, a playful look in her eyes. Let me think. She tapped a finger on her chin, pretending to consider it deeply. You must tell me something you are afraid of. He just stared at her. Seriously? That's what she wants. He had expected her to ask for his sword or make him do something stupid. This felt different, more personal than he liked. That's a weird prize, he said, kicking a loose rock on the ground. You agreed, she reminded him, her smile not fading. No questions asked, but I am merciful. You do not have to tell me now. I will claim my prize later. He just grunted in response. Later, whatever. Gives me time to think of something that isn't the actual truth. They started walking towards the clean-looking part of the city. The contrast was strange, going from busted-up streets to perfectly paved roads. People here were walking around like nothing had happened, some of them even laughing. This place is weird, he muttered, looking at a woman in a fancy dress walking a small dog. It feels protected, Syrian observed, her own gaze scanning the area. Her earlier playfulness was gone, replaced by her usual cautious watchfulness. The air is different. As they got deeper in, Knox started seeing more people who didn't look like they belonged in a fancy neighborhood. He saw a guy with a huge axe slung over his back, and a group of people in mismatched armor arguing about something near a fountain. Players, he thought, or whatever they're calling themselves. This must be some kind of hub. He started looking around, not just at the new people, but for familiar faces. Where are they? Did they even make it? Syrian noticed him looking around, his focus no longer on their immediate surroundings, but on the crowds. You are searching for your allies, are you not? He glanced at her, surprised she'd picked up on it so quickly. Yeah, he admitted. The girls I was with at the school. Told them to meet me here. The ones you are soul-linked with, she asked, her voice quiet. He stopped walking and looked at her. How the hell does she know about that? He hadn't said a word. The system didn't show that stuff to other people. Did it? How do you know that term? He asked, his voice low and serious. She seemed to realize she'd said something she shouldn't have. My people, we are sensitive to such bonds, she explained, not quite meeting his eyes. I can feel the connection you share with them. It is faint, but it is there. A thread of loyalty and something more. He just watched her for a long moment, processing that. She can feel it? That sounds creepy. It made him feel exposed, like she could see things about him he couldn't. Don't go reading my mind, princess, he said, his voice flat. He started walking again. It is not a matter of reading your mind, she said, easily keeping pace with him. It is like seeing a color. It is simply there. He didn't reply. They walked further into the district, the crowds getting thicker. There was a large, open square ahead, and a big crowd was gathered around a massive electronic billboard on the side of a building. It wasn't showing ads, but scrolling lists of names and numbers. What's all that about? He thought, steering them in that direction. As they got closer, he could make out the text on the screen. Bounty board. Target, Gorik the Defiler, 50000C. Target, Sludge Beast Anomaly, 15000C. Target, the Mercenary Lola, 20000C. He saw Lola's name, and his eyes narrowed. So she's got a price on her head, too. Interesting. Syrian's eyes fixed on the name Gorik the Defiler. Her breath hitched just a little. He is known even in this world, she thought. This changes things. The danger is greater than I imagined. She turned to Knox. Her mood was serious. Knox, she said, her voice low and urgent. We must leave this place. Now. Yeah, this crowd's a bit much, he agreed. And it's getting late. We can pick up the search for your fan club and my girls tomorrow. They pushed their way out of the throng of people, moving away from the bright lights of the bounty board. The streets were getting darker as evening settled in. We need a place to stay for the night, Syrian stated, her gaze sweeping their surroundings. Yeah, about that, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm a little short on cash right now. Syrian stopped and looked at him. Short on cash? she repeated, the term unfamiliar. Broke, he clarified. No money. Zilch. He jangled his empty pockets for emphasis. She tilted her head, her pointy ears twitching just a little. Are you referring to currency? She asked, her voice calm. Is she messing with me, or just really dense? He thought. Yeah, money. To pay for a room. She reached into a small, embroidered pouch at her belt he hadn't noticed before. She fumbled inside it for a moment, then pulled out a shiny gold coin. It looked old and had strange symbols on it. Will this be sufficient for our lodging? She offered it to him, her palm flat. He stared at the coin. It was thick and heavy-looking. The hell is that? Is that actual gold? He took it from her. It felt surprisingly weighty in his hand. It's a royal coin from Life Woods, she explained. He turned it over and over. Looks real enough. But will anyone here take it? This wasn't exactly a fantasy kingdom. This was, or used to be, a normal city. Standing around wouldn't get them anywhere, and he knew a place where people dealt with all sorts of things. Come on, he said, pocketing the coin. I think I know a place we can ask. She looked at him, her expression questioning, but she didn't argue. She just followed as he started walking, turning away from the main square. He led them down a side street that was a little less clean. The buildings here were still intact, but the people seemed different. This area feels less orderly, she commented, staying a little closer to him now. Yeah, well, we're not looking for orderly, he replied. He spotted the building he was looking for up ahead. It didn't have a big sign, just a single light over a dark door. This is it. He walked right up to the door and pushed it open. A wall of noise hit them, people talking loudly and the clatter of something like dice on tables. He stepped inside, and Syrian followed, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. The room was full of people huddled around tables, playing cards and other games he didn't recognize. Okay, who do I talk to? He thought, scanning the room. He saw a man leaning against a bar in the back, watching everything. The guy looked like he was in charge. Knox started moving that way, weaving through the crowded tables. Stay close, he said to Syrian without looking back. She was already right behind him. He reached the bar and leaned against it, waiting for the man to look at him. The man finally turned his head, his eyes giving him a quick, bored once-over. What I want, kid? The man asked, his voice rough. Knox didn't say anything at first. He just pulled the gold coin out of his pocket and placed it on the bar, sliding it over. Want to know if this is worth anything here? The man looked down at the coin. He picked it up, his expression not changing. He turned it over, then bit it. He actually bit it? Where'd you get this? The man asked, his eyes sharp now. Found it, he lied, shrugging. So, is it worth anything, or is it just a fancy paperweight? The man looked from the coin to Knox. Then his gaze flickered to Syrian, who was standing silently behind him. It's real gold, that's for sure, the man said slowly. Not from around here, though. Collectors might like it. He slid the coin back. I'll give you 100 for it. 100? That's it. He knew gold was worth way more than that. This guy was trying to rip him off. He chuckled a low, dry sound. 100, he repeated, shaking his head. Come on, man. Don't play me. It's got to be worth more than that. The man's eyes narrowed. That's my offer. Take it or leave it, kid. I ain't got all night. Just then, another man at the bar, who had been listening in, leaned over. Hey, let me see that. He was bigger than the bartender, with a scar on his cheek. Knox didn't move. Got my own business here, he said, keeping his voice level. The scarred man grinned, showing a few missing teeth. I'm making it my business. He reached for the coin. Before his hand could touch it, Knox's hand shot out and clamped down on his wrist. It happened so fast the guy didn't even have time to react. His grip was tight. I said, he started, his voice a low growl. It's my business. He could feel that corrupted mana inside him stir, just a little. Now back off before you lose a hand. The man's grin vanished. He tried to pull his wrist free, but Knox's grip was like stone. The bartender just watched, his arms crossed now, interest showing in his eyes. All right. Ease up, kid, the scar man grunted, the bravado gone from his voice. Knox held on for another second, then let go. The man stumbled back, rubbing his wrist and glaring. He muttered something under his breath and walked away. Knox turned back to the bartender, who was looking at him a little differently now. So about that coin, he said, picking it up. Let's try this again. What's a real offer? The bartender sighed. You're a feisty one, ain't ya? He leaned forward. Look, it's worth a lot to the right person. I can give you 500 cash. That's my final offer, for real this time. Or you can take your chances finding a collector out there on your own. He considered it. 500 would get them a decent room, food, and supplies. It was probably still less than the coin was actually worth, but it was fast, and he didn't want to wander around flashing a gold coin. Deal, he said. He pushed the coin back across the bar. The bartender nodded and counted out some bills from a drawer. He slid the stack of money over, and Knox quickly counted it before stuffing it into his pocket. Pleasure doing business with you, the bartender said, his voice flat. He gave Syrian another look, then went back to watching the room. Knox turned to leave. Let's go, he said to Syrian. She followed him out, not saying a word until they were back on the street. The noise of the gambling house faded behind them as the door closed. You handled that situation with surprising force, she finally said, looking at him. Her eyes were studying him. Have you dealt with men like that before? In a place like this? He looked at her, then just shook his head. Nope, he said. All that inside. I just improvised. Guess all those years of watching my own back taught me a thing or two, he thought. He looked away from her down the empty street. It didn't matter how he knew, just that he did. Doesn't matter now, he said, changing the subject. We got the money. Now let's go find a place to sleep that doesn't smell like cheap beer and desperation. Would you just put that thing down already? Layla snapped, glaring at the girl beside her up on the roof. Rura didn't even look up. Her pink hair just hung over the small, glowing screen she held. Her fingers kept tapping and tapping on it. Layla sighed and reached over, snatching the phone right out of her hands. Rura finally looked up then, blinking her big eyes like she was surprised. Hey, I was playing, she said, her voice quiet. She reached out to try and get it back. We've only been in this weird world for like a few days, Layla told her, stuffing the phone into a pouch on her own belt. And you're already stuck to that phone thingy, so pay attention. She had a long katana sword strapped to her back, and her black hair was pulled back tight. But it has games, Rura mumbled as she looked down at her empty hands. It's fun. Fun isn't why we're here, okay? Layla said, putting a hand on her hip. Gorik sent us to find that princess, remember, so we need to focus on the job. Rura just shrugged her small shoulders a little. I know we have to get her, but she's just one princess, she said, looking out over the city buildings. And everyone says she's weak, so why did you even have to come along with me? She looked back at Layla. I could probably handle a weak princess by myself, you know. Layla's hand went to the hilt of her sword. She looked down at the street far below them. My sister Lola said something different, so I'm not taking any chances on this one. Rura perked up a little bit at that name. Lola? You mean Lola the mercenary? She asked, leaning forward. Did she see the princess already? Did she try and get her? Layla nodded, her hand tightening on her sword for a second. Lola looked pretty shaken up when I saw her. Yeah, she tried to get her, she explained, looking back at Rura. And she told me to be careful, because there's a human boy with the princess, and Lola said he is big trouble. She has never seen her sister so shaken up before. She said the boy was strong, like way stronger than he looked when they fought. Rura tilted her head. Stronger than Lola? She said, she wasn't sure how it would have gone if the fight had kept going, she said. She shook her head. Lola never says stuff like that. So that means this boy is no joke. She looked hard at Rura. So, no more phones, okay, just the mission. Rura looked like she wanted to argue, but then she just nodded. Okay, Layla, no phones. Good. She turned back to watch the streets. We find them, we grab the princess nice and quiet, and we get out. No messing around with that boy. We just need to spot them first. It was the next day. Knox and Syrian were having breakfast in a restaurant that looked too nice for them. Knox looked at the menu and just pointed at a picture of some eggs and bacon. Syrian ordered something with fruit, picking at it carefully when it arrived. So, I'm going to go look for the girls after this, he said, talking around a mouthful of bacon. Syrian put her fork down. Alone? Knox, that is not a wise course of action. I'll be fine, he said, not looking at her. I need to do it on my own for a little while. That mercenary, Lola, she will not simply forget what happened, she insisted, her voice low. Gorik will send others, and they will be searching for you now, not just me. He knew she was probably right about that. That Lola chick definitely looked pissed. She'll be back, or she'll send friends. He took a long drink of water. Look, you're level 70, right? You can take care of yourself if someone shows up. He met her eyes. I gotta do this by myself. It won't take long. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. He's pushing me away. Why? She didn't like the feeling, the thought of being separated from him in this strange city. But she saw the look in his eyes, that stubborn set to his jaw. He had made up his mind. Very well, she said finally, her voice stiff again. But if you find yourself in peril you cannot handle, you will not be able to rely on my aid. Wouldn't dream of it, he said, though the words felt a little empty. They finished their meal in silence. He paid with the money he'd gotten for her coin, and it took a good chunk of what was left. Outside on the street, the air felt a little cooler. So, he said, turning to her, what will you do while I'm gone? I shall wander this city, she said, her voice regaining its formal tone. I wish to learn more of your kind, your world. She looked around at the people walking by on the street, her expression a mix of curiosity and caution. Suit yourself, he said with a shrug. Just don't get into any trouble. He turned to leave without another word. He is leaving me, she thought, a strange pang hitting her chest. He is a human, so I should have expected this. She watched him walk away, his back straight as he disappeared into the crowd. It is for the best. I must remember my mission. She stood there for a moment, then she started walking in the opposite direction. The city was a confusing place, full of strange noises and smells. She saw people staring into small, glowing rectangles in their hands, their faces blank. What strange spell has captivated them, she wondered. She walked past a shop with clothes displayed behind a large window of clear crystal. The outfits were colorful and strange, nothing like the practical garments she was used to in Lifewoods. A group of young humans walked past her, laughing loudly at something one of them had said. They moved with a casual confidence she found both puzzling and a little bit irritating. She found a small park with benches and a few trees. It felt a little more familiar, so she sat down on one of the benches. A small child ran past, chasing a brightly colored ball, his mother calling after him with a tired smile. Syrian watched them, her hand unconsciously drifting to the hilt of her sword, hidden beneath her jacket. He just leaves his mother's side without a thought for his safety, she thought. This world is very different. Up on a nearby rooftop, Rura sighed loudly, flopping on her back. I'm so bored, Layla. There's nothing to do up here but stare at buildings. Layla didn't look away from the street below. We're on a job, not a vacation. She had her hand on the hilt of her katana, her eyes scanning the park. Lola said the boy was dangerous, but he's not even with the princess. That's weird. Maybe he got tired of her, Rura said, sitting up. She pulled a small, brightly colored candy out of her pouch and popped it into her mouth. She looks kind of boring from up here, just sitting on a bench. Layla ignored her, her focus narrowing. Since Knox was not around, this was their best chance. Let's begin. Syrian watched the small child run after his ball. A genuine laugh bubbled up from him, and the sound felt completely out of place in this new world. She leaned back on the bench, letting the sun warm her face a little. This world has some good things in it, I guess. She was starting to relax, just a little bit. Excuse me, miss? Are you lost? The voice came from directly behind her, and it made her whole body jolt. She spun around, her hand instinctively going to the sword hidden under her jacket. Two girls stood there, one with black hair and a serious look, the other with pink hair and a bored expression. How would they get so close? She thought, her mind racing. She hadn't felt them coming at all, not a single sound or shift in the air. Her senses had never failed her like this before. Is this world dulling my senses, or is there something else? The thought was a cold spike of fear. The small child with the ball was only a few feet away, and his mother was watching from a nearby bench. She couldn't fight here. Layla spoke again, her voice low and calm. We don't want to make a scene. Princess, just come with us quietly, and no one gets hurt. Rura sighed dramatically and kicked to the dirt. Can we just hurry up? This place is boring, and I want to go back to my game. Syrian stood up slowly, her hand still near her sword. I don't know who you are, but you have mistaken me for someone else. She tried to keep her voice even, hoping they would just leave her alone. The mother of the small child was starting to look over at them now, a curious frown on her face. Layla just shook her head with a small, tired smile. Nice try, but Gorik wants you back. So let's go. She took a single, deliberate step forward. Syrian knew talking was over right then. She had to get them away from these people, away from the kids. If you want me, you will have to follow, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. She turned and sprinted away, heading for a narrow alley between two buildings. I have to lead them away from here before anyone gets hurt. Rura giggled, a high-pitched, childish sound. Ooh, a chase. This is more fun. She took off after Syrian, moving with a surprising quickness. Layla cursed under her breath and followed, her hand already on the hilt of her katana. Rura, wait. Stick to the plan. She led them into the alley and tried to kick Rura. She used the wall to propel herself forward, but Rura just giggled as the kick went right through her. It felt like kicking at smoke. Syrian almost lost her balance. What was that? She thought, her eyes wide with surprise. She had no time to think about it, because Layla came at her with the sword. She was fast, her blade cutting through the air with a sharp sound. Syrian did a quick series of backflips to make some distance between them. The moves put her at the very end of the narrow alley. That was a bad idea, now I'm trapped. Layla stopped, her katana held ready. You're quick, princess, I'll give you that. She took a slow step forward, her eyes never leaving her. But you're out of room to run. Rura sighed from the alley entrance. Can I hit her now, Layla? This is taking forever, and you're not even having fun. Just stay put, Rura, and don't interfere, she said without looking back. She's mine. Syrian's mood suddenly shifted, and the air in the alley felt different. She smirked, her mouth slightly open, and took on a cocky attitude. With no one interfere, she had no reason to hold back. She wasn't trapped here with them. They were trapped in here with her. Layla watched her, her eyes narrowing. What's with this act? Is she bluffing? She tightened her grip on her katana. You're done running, princess? Oh, I think I am, she said, her voice losing its formal edge. It sounded almost playful now. This is much better. No people around to get in the way. She took a step forward, not back, and the tip of her own sword scraped lightly on the ground. The ground around Layla's feet began to move. Thick, thorny vines erupted from the cracks in the ground, shooting up to wrap around her legs. What the hell? She yelled, stumbling as the vines pulled her off balance. She tried to cut them with her sword, but they were tough, and more just kept growing, snaking up her body. Rura just giggled. Ooh, plant magic. That's a new one. She didn't seem worried at all, just interested. Syrian ignored her and walked toward Layla, who was now being squeezed by the thorny vines. You came all this way for me, she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. You should have come better prepared. She flicked her wrist, and the vines tightened their grip. Layla cried out in pain as dozens of sharp thorns dug deep into her. You're not what they said, she gasped out, struggling against the plants. People are often wrong, she said, stopping just a few feet from her. Rura sighed, a bored sound. My turn now, I guess. She walked towards Syrian, her hands in her pockets. I'm Rura. Can we be done with this soon? I'm getting hungry. Syrian turned to face her, leaving Layla to struggle. You're an odd one. She swung her sword at Rura, a fast, clean arc meant to cut her in two. Just like before, the blade passed right through her, like she was made of smoke. It happened again, she thought, her cold focus wavering for just a second. What kind of power is that? Rura smiled. That tickles. Then her hand shot out, and it wasn't smoky at all. It was solid, and it slammed into Syrian's stomach with a force that knocked the wind out of her. She stumbled back, gasping for air. The hit was real, and it was strong. She can choose when she's solid? That's a problem. Layla used the moment to finally cut through the last of the vines around her, freeing herself. She stood up, breathing hard, with several bleeding puncture wounds on her arms and legs. Rura, I told you to wait, she snapped, but she looked a little relieved too. You were taking too long, she said with a shrug. Now it's a real fight. She and Layla stood side by side, both facing Syrian, who was still trying to get her breath back.